girl hated her life and played a game every night to escape reality. It was supposed to be the last night to pass the last level, but she had a hard day. She couldn't stand it, fell asleep and postponed everything until the morning. She wakes up in the middle of the night, but already in the body of a player of that very game and at the very beginning of the journey. To get back, she'll have to complete every level without a single mistake, the goal being to gain the favor of each of the 5 tyrants. The week before, it all started with the fact that some time ago a girl gets into the game. She wanted to return to reality, tried and very painfully passed each level. The levels were marked by different guys, characters with whom she had to interact. And so she passed the last level. She thought she would be returned to the normal world, but nothing like that happened. Lily felt cheated. She had done everything that was required and still remained in this hateful game. Since she got stuck here, she did everything to get back to her reality, which she missed very much. The main characters are madmen who destroyed it dozens of times, day after day, mercilessly and with a smile in their eyes. The girl stubbornly went through each level, dealt with the characters, prayed for it to end soon, waited for the last level, and it was like this. It was a very difficult path. She checked her statistics several times, but each level was passed flawlessly. She is completely disappointed, apathetic, depressed, has no understanding of what will happen next because she expected one thing, but it turned out differently. She can no longer look at these statistics, at these pop-up windows. She is irritated by every second of being in this body. She already had thoughts. Is she really here forever and will endlessly go through level after level? Hundreds, thousands of times dies like the most ordinary character who has no soul, only the appearance of the character and the indicator of his level. Lily saw another pop-up window in front of her, the system that sometimes communicates important information. Now it says that all male characters have been completed, but that's all. The most interesting part is just beginning. A secret mode is launched that no one warned her about. She has no idea what it means or how long it will last. It is reported that now she can pass the level of the real protagonist, and this knows that among the previous ones there was none, and the real protagonist is waiting for her ahead. All this time Lily was sure that the main character was among those guys, but this was only a warm-up before the main decisive level. She has a feeling that a little more, and she will go crazy. There is no guarantee that after the level with the main character, she will go through everything she had to and return to her world. The girl doesn't trust anyone anymore. She's not as energetic as she was at the beginning. But what kind of desire to go through something are we talking about if she was just deceived and forced to go further? Lily is transported to the very room where each level begins, although she did not even have time to read the information about what to do and where to go. Mrs. Lily, her tattered clothes miraculously became neat. Her hair became cleaner. This only means one thing. The game continues. Her character has been updated and is ready to win. This time she has no information. She has no idea what the main character looks like, where he lives, what his name is. There is only a goal to find him and earn his favor. Meanwhile, the maid knocked on the door of the room. She came in to make sure that the mistress had woken up and that they could start preparing breakfast for her. Words cannot describe how many times Lily saw this man and how tired she was of it all. Every time the same thing. You need to choose one of 3 options. The first one is "Good morning, Ella." The second one is how rude to show up to the lady at such a time. And the third one is what happened. She chooses the third option, the one she has already chosen hundreds of times and maybe many more. In addition to questions about breakfast, Ella wanted to convey that His Majesty Emperor Dietrich ordered that she be brought to his office and preferably as soon as possible. Emperor Dietrich is one of those she has known the longest. He is a real tyrant, and at this level she had the most problems. The girl knows this man very well. He requires a special approach. At the same time, she always tried to avoid being seen by him. Usually their meetings do not end well. He was the first one to be conquered. He was the one who locked her in the palace tower and treated her like a nobody. Lily remembers this period very well. She was given almost no food, kept in a dark room. Even the bed was such that it felt much more pleasant to sit on the floor. Ella starts to hurry. The master really likes it when he has to wait a long time, and most often punishes the assistant, although she has nothing to do with it. 3 options appear again: to run away, to agree, or to refuse to go. but they are all the same. She has no choice as such. The first and third options will still lead to a bad ending and death. All that remains is to agree. It is never possible to predict how a meeting with this person will end. His mood changes very quickly, and anything can influence it. He never has a smile on his face. He is a stern, emotionless, cold-tempered person. Lily came to his office very quickly. She didn't take long to get ready. It was much more important to keep his neutral mood so that it didn't get worse. Surprisingly, even though she didn't put in any effort, she still looks gorgeous, as if she spent at least half a day getting ready. The girl greeted His Majesty properly. She is afraid to make an extra move and say an extra word, but this still does not guarantee that everything will go smoothly. The first thing he talked to her about was that even having lost her title, but living in the palace, she still held on as if she were part of the imperial family. For some reason, this causes him torment, although he himself brought her here, and now he is unhappy. But if he doesn't like something, he could have kicked her out a long time ago. The girl would definitely not be against it. Although if you take into account the moment, he will never be able to kick her out. Dietrich Ataloya is a sickly and withdrawn prince. Although the guy was the legitimate heir, the second son from the concubine received all the love of the emperor. And when the empress died of illness, he was left here all alone. At that period of his life when he felt terrible, hated the whole world around him, and didn't know what the point of living was, Lily appears before him, born of a woman of low birth, who at least slightly diluted his gray everyday life. These two children immediately united due to their similar fate. They understood each other very well and quickly became friends. Two lonely people became close like brother and sister. They spent all their free time together and could no longer imagine their lives without each other. All they did was play, laugh at the maids, hide from them, and spend their childhood as happily as they could in order to quickly forget the situations that almost destroyed them. The children seemed to heal each other. They helped to see something good in this world and not to think about the bad too often, at least when they were close. So Lily at one time became the closest person to Dietrich. At that time, the girl saw a smile on this man's face for the last time. Unbeknownst to either of them, the friendship ended when it turned out that Lily was not from the imperial family. When the boy found out about this, he felt that something would be done to her. He ran to say goodbye but did not have time. He opened the doors to that very room, but she was no longer there. And of course, that incident greatly influenced his life. Lily was kicked out of the palace and he thought she had a chance to say goodbye. But for some reason she didn't. For a long time he could not believe that she would no longer be in his life. Then he was left alone, which he feared more than anything in the world. For some reason the boy perceived this situation as a betrayal on her part and was very seriously offended, without understanding the situation, how it all happened. He had only one thing on his mind. She was leaving him too, going to the second prince like all the others. This is how it all looked in his eyes, and then, after the coup, having destroyed the second prince and his supporters, the first thing Dietrich did when he ascended to the throne was naturally remember the traitor Lily and couldn't leave her alone. He sent his soldiers to capture her, no matter where in the world she might be, and he succeeded. He wanted her to answer for her actions, but she didn't even have the opportunity to explain everything and achieve justice. His Majesty ordered that she be locked up in the western tower of the palace and that no one be allowed to see her without his permission. That was her first level. Very quickly, their friendly love turned into hatred. And to this day, she is offended that everything happened this way because the guy never found out that he treated her like that in vain, and there is no point in telling him about it. Even if she decides to do it, he still won't listen to anything. Lily knows this for sure, so she just keeps quiet, no matter how painful it is. And also, in this game, there is such a feature. When the girl meets the main characters, in front of them, her body literally freezes, and she can only pronounce phrases allowed by the system, which she didn't like from the very beginning. For now, the level of disposition on his part is 0, and even increasing this indicator by 1 unit will be too difficult. He is not the kind of person that is easy to get along with. It is something like an impossible task. It is easier to give up than to try to be friends with him again. There are options to ask for forgiveness, to remain silent, and to worsen the situation by saying that he has some kind of unhealthy voice. Lily always chose the first option, but now she does not want to immediately improve Dietrich's position for some reasons. She just wanted to click on the third option to ruin his mood, but suddenly something happened. Suddenly the fourth option appears, marked in golden color, as if it were some special one. It was even more dubious than the one she wanted to choose just now. This option is called what you're talking about. Look at yourself, a madman sitting on a throne. This is what she definitely didn't expect. This is a very, so to speak, sophisticated option, but she still chooses the third one, which will be a little softer. After all, Lily is not so bold yet. Here she tells him that his voice is unhealthy and immediately explains that this is not an insult at all, but concern. She twisted this option to her advantage, began to remind him that as a child he often got sick at this time of year. And then, just in case, she apologized for her impudence and said that she was just worried about him out of habit. The girl already thought that she had finally managed to avoid the bad ending and did not believe that everything was calm. Literally a moment passes. He comes up to her, grabs her by the hair and asks Yorin to redo everything she said again. It is outrageous for him to hear that she is worried about him at all, and it is disgusting to remember how he could previously perceive her as a friend or a close person. Lily got used to his behavior, although it is unclear why she chose this option at all, because she could have simply remained silent. The Emperor has such a crazy look that it seems that now she will definitely be in trouble, and he will not leave her words without attention. It's very simple. He hasn't believed her words for a long time. She has become a stranger to him, and having heard something like that, there could be no other reaction. Now she is nobody to him, just a person whom he will keep in his tower for eternity and will not give her a single free day. And then something weird happens, despite the fact that she chose the worst option, which made him angry. A notification appears that she has increased Dietrich's affection and kindness by 5 levels. Although if you look at the situation from the outside, you wouldn't be able to tell. The girl never chose this option. She was afraid that it would get worse. But now she took a risk and got 5 points for it. Amazing. The Emperor begins to remind her how she betrayed him, and he finds it very funny to watch how she then tries to gain his trust with such tricks that will not work. Everything is somehow too clear to me. The system speaks and in one thing, and he behaves completely differently. Maybe Dietrich is trying to hide and pretend that he is angry with her, but inside everything is completely different. He even clenches his fist, looks at her with an insanely cold gaze, says how he hates her. One can only hope that this is for show, but in reality he really began to treat her at least a little better. Meanwhile, for some reason he tells her that tomorrow there will be a celebration in honor of the coronation, which everyone has been waiting for a long time. This is the celebration of Dietrich's coronation, the first fixed event in the game where all 3 male characters will appear. The guy says that there will be those who know about her existence, and he thinks that she should be there. Unexpectedly, but he even asks her opinion, what she thinks to do, and Lily stands and again is afraid to react somehow incorrectly. This is a very important event. You need to prepare for it very well because her future path depends on how she behaves there. She again had 3 options and again an additional special 4th one, which sound like this. I also want to attend, I don't want to go, I rely on your decision, Your Majesty, and the most interesting option. What difference does it make whether I go or not? Obviously, options 2 and 3 increase her favor, but Dietrich, who wants to keep her locked up, is unlikely to be pleased with her presence. The problem is that the last option, what difference does it make whether I go or not, sounds like after that the game will be over and she will definitely lose, or at least lose the points she earned a couple of minutes ago. This time the girl was afraid to use the last option. She said that she also wanted to be present, even if this answer did not increase his kindness level by 1 point. Naturally, the Emperor was not very angry. He has no right to refuse her this. Although, judging by the previous situation, this does not mean that everything is fine. Suddenly he is calm on the outside, but on the inside he began to hate her. Dietrich says that this is the right choice. She needs to communicate with other people, although from his side it sounds too strange. Why then did he keep her locked up if he thinks that she needs something completely different? The further Lily goes, the more confused she becomes because everything is somehow illogical and it makes her nervous. It's never clear which option is better. In one case, the worst option did better, and in the second case, the good option gave the same result. Now, the result of the choice is different from the usual passage. In the usual mode, he would have run it without hesitation. A message appears that if you replay a male character after viewing the hidden ending, you can learn secrets that are not available in normal mode. I'm very curious what this means. In any case, she doesn't plan to stop and will go to the end. Dietrich let her go. Lily stopped at the entrance and thought about what to do next. This time, everything was somehow different, and she was not ready for it. She is completely confused. She is confused by these golden options. Could this really mean that the plot can be changed by clicking on the corresponding option? If Dietrich's lines have changed, then other characters in the secret mode will probably change too. She has already met the first one. The second one is next. The Duke of the North, Noah Dvern, he is no better than Dietrich. He is a terrible person, treats people like exhibits. There is nothing good about him, not even a single word. And also, under the pretext of collecting works of art, Noah once locked her in a warehouse. And when I got bored, I just left him there for a very long time. In the cold, without amenities, food, or lighting. After him, there was the great magician Ivan. As soon as the girl remembers how he treated her, she gets goosebumps. To make Lily dependent only on him, he manipulated her mind and drove her crazy more than once. He was the most terrible. She was afraid to meet him and even more so, to look this man in the eyes. After him was the Knight Commander Siegfried. Lily thought that at least he would be normal and not as cruel as all the others. But more about this person later, because the next character probably definitely deserves special attention. He was the last one, the prince of the neighboring empire of Tyene, Atar, a very nice guy who almost made her fall in love with him at first sight. He has a rare, beautiful hair color, and he is also noble and presentable like no one else. There was a time when she thought only about him, dreamed of seeing him as often as possible, to look into his beautiful eyes. It was the only thing she needed to be happy. One time, she accidentally tripped while walking down the hallway, and he just happened to be nearby and couldn't pass by. The girl felt very awkward then. She wanted to fall through the ground just to turn back time, and so that he would not see it. She was ashamed of that situation, because the guy she liked the most was right next to her. For some reason, she thought that he would pass by, stop paying attention to her, tell others about the situation or anything, but not what he actually did. His pleasant energy overshadowed the entire corridor. Lily fell in love with him again, and even for a moment forgot that she was sitting on the floor and had just been very embarrassed. At that moment, there was no disposition on his part at all. The indicator was equal to 0, although it seemed that there were already some points there. The moment he gave her his hand, those same answer options appeared, and it was the first time she was afraid of making a mistake. When suddenly some kind of system failure occurs, and this situation happens in reality. Although according to the plot they were supposed to meet only on holidays, the girl doesn't understand how this is possible, and he, without even waiting for an answer, takes her shoe and helps her put it on, as if he had just pushed her. The heart starts beating faster. Lily hasn't chosen any answers yet, and if she doesn't, the game settings will reset and she'll have to start over. All sorts of unpleasant images appear before her eyes, which cause disgust and hatred for the game. There was no need to remind her about this. She remembers everything perfectly, is not going to repeat past mistakes, and is already ready to make a choice. This meeting should have been very pleasant, but the past came flooding back to my thoughts so unexpectedly that it ruined the whole mood. I need to press something quickly. Lily thought about choosing the gold option, and then thought for a couple of seconds. And at the most inopportune moment, her hand slips and she presses the gold option herself. The girl was afraid that she had chosen this option by accident, although maybe it was even for the best and nothing bad would happen. And this option sounded like she should ask if he's okay, which doesn't seem to quite fit this situation. But still, it's better than the options above. The guy looked into her eyes silently for several minutes, and for her, every second felt like an hour. She feels like everything is lost. She made a terrible mistake, and in a moment the game will start over again. And this is worse than any nightmare you can imagine. But at that moment, something happened that she never expected. The level of his sympathy towards her began to rise. Lily is sure that this is some kind of mistake, because this can't be. She chose the wrong option. The girl starts shaking, her hands start sweating, her eyes start watering, her breathing stops. She doesn't believe that she chose a good option and nothing bad will happen now. Atar's assistant comes up to him and reminds him that it's time for him to go somewhere and that it's very important. But the guy asks him to go on his own for now, and he himself wants to stay and talk with Lily for some time. As soon as he spoke to her, the girl got very scared. She said that if she said something wrong, she could apologize. If only he didn't misunderstand her. And then something else happens that literally makes her speechless. Something like this has never happened in all the time she has been in this world. She can say words that are not provided by the system. That is, now she is free to do so. This, in my opinion, maybe it's something outside the rules. Lily never ceases to be surprised and is afraid that this is some kind of mistake. All this time in the game in front of the main characters. No matter how hard she tried, she could only pronounce system phrases and nothing else. So, to make sure it wasn't some kind of mistake, she had an idea, but it was a bit risky. The guy might misunderstand it. Lily doesn't explain anything. She starts to rip her dress, and she does it so aggressively as if her life depended on it. So she checks something that used to be the same. When she got her clothes dirty, when they got torn, everything was immediately restored. And if this doesn't happen now, it means only one thing. The game has changed dramatically, and now everything will be new. The dress is torn, but it is not restored and remains the same as she made it, does not return to its original state. The girl didn't even have time to react to this, as he said that it was better for her to leave now and asked her to walk him home. Lily refused. She apologized for the situation and explained that now it would be better for her to leave alone. And if there was an opportunity, then she would definitely explain everything to him. The guy didn't quite understand what had just happened. In 1 second, she seemed to become a different person and stop being embarrassed as she had been at the beginning. A very unusual situation has occurred. Now she needs to think about a lot and check a lot, and right now in the near future. It's just a pity that this time Atar is hiding his true intentions very well. I just think he's so kind. Although last time he was not as cruel as all the other characters, during this time he has changed. And he has something he would like to experience in the near future. He will try to give her false points of kindness, win her over, and at the most unexpected moment, he will lock himself in a room with her and do what she just saw in those terrible pictures when she first saw him in that corridor. They get that it was some kind of warning, and she didn't even pay attention to it and didn't notice his face. Now he is not who he seems. He can very easily become the most dangerous character, and she will not know it and will regret that she fell for his pretty picture and did not check what is inside him. If she hadn't run away from him, he would have lured her into the room, but the plan suddenly went wrong. He spends all day imagining what he will do to her as soon as they are alone, and Lily seemed to sense it and, without realizing it, saved herself. I'm very curious what will come of this, but all she needs to do is be more attentive to these clues. Meanwhile, someone overheard his words, and it was that same emperor who probably became interested in influencing this plan. Naturally, as soon as he heard everything, he immediately went back in, and Atar doesn't even suspect that someone already knows about his plans. He shouldn't have thought about it so easily in the hallway, where there might be passers-by or those nearby. Some time passed. Lily had already run into some room, closed the door behind her, and started to think what it all meant. She hadn't received any notifications for a long time, and if she hadn't decided to check her suspicions, she would still not have known that a lot had changed. And these are changes that are very important and can even save lives in some situations. And also, as soon as she clicked on the last choice, the system stopped loading information, and she doesn't quite understand what that means. The dress can be torn at least 100 times, but the main thing is that the save still works. Nothing more important for her now in this game exists. The girl could act so boldly only because she had the opportunity to save herself, but now she is no longer sure of this. Lily was completely confused. If she thought that everything was somehow unclear before, then now it was even more so. She can't keep up with all these innovations and doesn't even understand whether it's good for her or bad. And then the very notification she was waiting for appears. Unfortunately, in secret mode, the save function is not available. She can't believe it. It's terrible. It's very, very bad. Lily turns out to believe it, and now she's afraid to even leave this room. In essence, she is offered a choice now that there is no way back. Either to go through the famous ending hundreds of thousands of times, endlessly repeating herself, or to risk her life in search of the real protagonist. The difficulty is that he won't have any clues. Everything will be for the first time, and this is already starting to drive her crazy. One wrong decision and everything starts over again. And also, the opportunity to return to your usual world disappears. The system asks whether to activate the new function of the secret mode. And of course, the girl chooses to activate it. This gives at least some chance to reach the end and return to her past life. Unfortunately, there is no other choice. And here in front of her appears some kind of incident log, which looks very interesting. It turns out that this incident log allows you to view all the records of the normal mode. It also records new information about characters discovered in secret mode, and that's interesting. The first thing Lily asked for was to show information about the real protagonist, but it turned out not to be that simple. She is told that it is impossible to see unknown information. For the entire time of the game, she will not know anything about him. And in the meantime, a new function has been added: viewing past memories. When viewing this book, now system functions are available not only in the Western Tower, and this is pleasing. It turns out that although you can't save now, you can use the system more freely, and that's at least something. To see the clues about the real protagonist, the only way is to know the password, and she doesn't have it. The password is the name of the real protagonist, but she doesn't know that either and is already starting to get very nervous. The girl has no idea how to use all this. It seems that it is better to do nothing at all, so as not to make things worse. And then some information appears in front of her concerning that very handsome Atar, who only seems that way. Atar Kanan, the fourth prince of the Tayin Empire, in the northern territory of the Ataloya Empire, in the spring of the 999th year of the imperial calendar, first met Lily at the celebration of his accession to the throne. All the letters start to get distorted, so I had to download past memories with this person. These scenes, she had seen them ad nauseum many times in previous playthroughs that had previously seemed very difficult. But for some reason, in all these memories lately, his face is hard to see. It is hidden behind some kind of black fog, and probably it is not just like that. The girl doesn't understand why this is so she decided to test the same thing using other characters as an example. She started asking for other guys' faces, but everything was perfectly visible. But something was wrong with the Atar. She really wants to know what it means. The girl feels that this moment should not be ignored, and it is desirable to figure it out as soon as possible. In any case, first of all, she needs to avoid that very choice on the day of the celebration. She just has a little time to prepare. Here comes that very moment. Lily looks great, but instead of relaxing and having fun, she has a whole lot of work today. She looks carefully at the whole room, planning to find Atar, because she knows for sure that today he should be here, like all the other guys. And also, today there will be a chance to find the main character. She may not see him, but he is definitely here. He will be watching her from afar all the time, which means that she can only trust her inner intuition, and she is doing just fine with that. Every minute more and more people are gathering. There are so many of them that Lily wasn't even prepared for it. She imagined it a little differently. The girl stands out from the rest thanks to her bright red dress, which suits her very well. It gives confidence, but it doesn't change the mood. Everything is very serious, and there is no time to relax. At some point, she gets the feeling that she urgently needs to go outside, as if someone is waiting for her there, so she does so. It's already dark, but thanks to the street lighting, everything is clearly visible, and you don't have to look closely to see anything. The only thing she knows for sure is that first the girl must see the Atar, and after that, everyone else. After exchanging greetings with one of them, then the next one appears, and so on, according to the plot. On the way back, she encounters Noah in the palace. Then on the Emperor's orders, Siegfried takes her to the tower. This is where the events end, and now she will have to relive it all again. It's good that the girl is ready for this, but what will happen next worries her the most. In the meantime, the first character, Atar, should appear soon. All that remains is to wonder whether he will show up or whether something will go wrong. And, as usual, she will not be ready for it. It's strange, but Noah appears first. She didn't expect to see him at all, but running away from him isn't the best idea either. The guy smiles, although his level of affection towards her is zero, and this should not be. His smile seems to be hiding something. He asks what she is doing here alone, as if he wants to suggest something or somehow fix it. While she doesn't understand why the characters change places, She had to greet the first character. Although there are so many thoughts and experiences inside now that it is becoming difficult to keep it all inside, as if everything is okay. Noah starts looking at her with his special look that captivates all the girls, but now it doesn't work. Lily already knows him very well, and this time he won't be able to charm her. She will communicate with him only for her own benefit and will never trust this person again, who is only cute in appearance. For the sake of decency, she talks to him and at the same time watches his gestures, which very often give him away. Today, the girl is especially attentive to everyone around her, even too much because it concerns her life. And the compliments don't end there. He says that he loves everything beautiful and that this beautiful thing is now standing right in front of him. If Lily didn't know this man the way she knows him, then like any other girl, she would immediately melt and never think that this was just bait to lure him into a trap. Noah no longer notices how their conversation consists only of him constantly complimenting her. From the outside, it looks a little fake. They talked for a very long time. Lily's smile was already so forced that a little more, and she would show how they really felt about him and stop pretending. Sometimes the girl looks around to see if there is anyone else nearby to whom she could turn her attention. Everything was more or less normal, but exactly until one moment when he suggested going for a walk, and this is exactly what you better not do. I wonder if she will be able to refuse, and if she can, how she will do it. Lily didn't have time to say a single word when Aaron came up to them and said that the girl already had an agreement with him, and he wasn't going to share her with anyone else. He invites her to come closer to him and spend this evening as they agreed, although in fact there was no agreement. It's as if he's trying to help her and feels how she doesn't want to go for a walk with that wine. Although the situation with him is no different. She doesn't want to stay with any of them, and in the meantime, the two have already started arguing about who will stay with Lily and who should leave. From these views, it is immediately clear that they will not part peacefully. There will be a conflict, and this is inevitable. One of them was so indignant that he couldn't hold back and shouted at the whole estate. Apparently, he wanted to be with Lily so much. Noah surprisingly turned out to be calmer. He apologized to the girl and said that if she wanted, she could come to him herself, and he, in turn, would not behave as crazy as some. Strangely, the girl seemed upset, although she just didn't know how to refuse him properly. She is no longer happy that Atar appeared right now. He probably just scared her with his behavior. Strangely, instead of asking how she feels and who she has communicated with, he says that she is not just another noble lady. And then he said that he heard that she lost her title of princess because of her mother's infidelity, but it is not yet clear why he even brought this up. Atar explained that he had only one question, to which for some reason he urgently needed to know the answer. Lily never ceases to be amazed at how many incomprehensible situations happen to her in life. Everyone wants something from her, and she doesn't have time to figure out what and to whom to say. It's strange, but instead of asking something serious, unusual, he asked if they know each other or not. Even the girl was surprised. She didn't hide it and said that his question sounded too strange. The guy explained that he just wanted to know if they had seen each other before or not, as if it was that important. She doesn't even know when to react, what to answer him. This man is a little out of his mind and doesn't even hide it. There is definitely something wrong here. Not only can the girl speak freely in front of this man, but also his behavior, manner of speech. He is not just a character with prepared lines, but rather a living person with his own consciousness, just like her. And then the worst part begins. The guy didn't wait for her answer and thought that since she wasn't in a hurry to answer, then he will force her to do it. He started to grab her hands as if he wants to take her somewhere and force her to do what he asks. He says some very strange words, and he does it as if these are his thoughts. And he also doesn't quite understand how this game works. The girl seemed to see herself from the outside, but it's unlikely that there are other people like her in the game. Lily would have found out about this much earlier. And then it starts. He takes out the very object that she saw in her memories and now realized what it was. She starts begging him, "Stop, don't do this. Someone might see us." And he squeezes her hands even tighter and isn't going to let go. Lily is absolutely helpless in this situation. She can't even resist, and the guy takes advantage of this. At some point, she couldn't hold back any longer and started kicking him. She has very sharp shoes, and it's a good thing she chose them today. And she also hit him hard in the face with both her tied hands, which he clearly didn't expect from her at that moment. Atar starts to get angry. He turned all red. He knew her as a very obedient girl who would not behave like that. And now she was able to stand up for herself. Now he is afraid to approach her. You never know what she can do now. Lily has already freed her hands. They hurt a lot. It becomes impossible to be near this person. I want to go somewhere or meet someone else. That would be great, but she still doesn't notice anyone around. The girl decided to act on her own. She just left him and didn't listen to a single word. How many times has he tried to tie her up, but nothing works? And now she will be afraid of him even more and will not even hide it from him. He himself knows that he scared her, and now he must hope that she does not tell anyone else about this situation. For example, whining. The guy calmly takes his things, says out loud that there is still enough time, and he will still make her confess everything. Atara was hurt again by that man. He had been hiding behind the tree all this time and had remained unnoticed until now. Considering the previous situation when he was also nearby, we can assume that this is not an accident. There are only two options. The guy's either watching Atar or Lily, which is probably more likely. Meanwhile, she had already managed to run away to a safe distance. Although there were few people around, she still remained on the street, risking that he would catch up with her again. Although the girl is so scared that it would be better to go into the hall, someone would definitely protect her there, especially since no villain would attack his victim in a crowded place. She knows it herself, but for some reason, she is in no hurry to go inside, as if she feels that somewhere nearby there is that very main character, and she definitely won't find him inside. She is already starting to get confused, doesn't understand anything, is afraid of every rustle. Everything at some point suddenly went wrong. Lily could only understand that most likely, that golden button freed the Atar from the system and also helped it gain consciousness. But what if the others start remembering things? What if the others develop self-awareness and she can't even save herself? Suddenly, someone screamed. Some people came out into the street and it turns out that something terrible happened. Someone destroyed Prince Atar, and also he is in those very chains that he wanted to put on Lily when he grabbed her hands. The girl can't believe her eyes. There was no one else on the street except them. At least that's what I thought. She can't imagine how this could happen, who did it and why. And most importantly, she gets goosebumps just from the thought that this person is somewhere here. She wanted to conduct some kind of investigation, but she doesn't know how to do it, and most likely that person has already disappeared somewhere. She stood and looked at it for a while. Then a guy came up to her and decided to ask if she was scared to look at such a sight. This man turned out to be the emperor. Lily didn't even immediately understand why he would suddenly be interested in how she was feeling. He probably just talks to her like that in front of other people. But if they were alone, he wouldn't ask anything like that. His Majesty immediately ordered all entrances and exits of the palace to be closed, a list of everyone who left the banquet hall to be made, and that's all for now. Strangely, after he asked how she felt, he seemed to forget about it and began to hint that it was she who could have committed such a terrible act and destroyed a person. Lily couldn't believe her ears. She didn't understand how he could even say such a thing, and in front of everyone. The emperor was so upset that he ordered an immediate response. Otherwise, he would perceive her silence as an admission that she had something to do with it. The assistant starts to intervene in the conversation and says that the lady could not have done this. At the very least, she would not have understood these chains and would not have been able to put them on a person. Therefore, he proposes to exclude her from the list of suspects, to which the emperor replied that he did not ask him and does not advise even trying to interfere in this matter. His task is to follow orders and not to advise who to suspect and who not. Some guy comes up to him, apologizes. Maybe he's butting in where it's none of his business, but it seems like he has something to say. Lily looked at him with a very surprised look, because she had never seen him before, and couldn't even imagine how he could help in this situation. Judging by the emperor's reaction, he also can't remember this man and has no idea what he's doing here. It turns out that they just rarely see this person, so His Majesty didn't even remember who he was. For some reason, Lily reacted to him as if he was something special. The girl literally couldn't take her eyes off him and froze in one place. He is a very handsome young man. He was a little late for the event and immediately apologized because this usually does not happen. This is Archduke Fenrich. He is such a respected person that everyone tries to invite him to their events, but the guy accepts them very rarely. He began to tell that he had been delayed, checking out a suspicious situation that had raised a lot of questions in his mind. He only had to look in her direction for 1 second, and the girl almost lost consciousness. So much his presence haunted her. You can look forever at how his appearance is perfect for the nighttime. His hair shimmers amazingly under the moonlight. It's as if he was created for the night and she wasn't the only one who noticed it. Fenrich reported that the night bodyguard was looking for Prince Atar, and the Duke thought it would be better if His Majesty met him first. In that case, the Emperor promised to talk to the knight and asked the Archduke for one last thing. He wants him to take the girl to the tower and make sure she goes inside and doesn't go out anywhere else. Fenrich will gladly carry out this order. He is not going to take her by force. He politely asked her to follow him. At the same time, he looked into her eyes in such a special way that Lily was completely enchanted by this man and was ready to do everything he told her to do. She has never seen such beautiful people. Not only is he cute, but he is also very polite. With him, she feels very calm and stops being afraid of everyone around her. Maybe this is a very wrong feeling, but for now, you just need to listen to him and calmly follow him to the tower as the Emperor ordered. At first, they walked in silence. No one looked at each other. But if you look at them from the side, they look very beautiful. It's not for nothing that she liked him so much. The girl already thought that they would remain silent the whole way, but he asked how she felt because after what happened, even some men began to feel worse. He imagines how she feels now, after what she saw, and the Emperor also called her having something to do with it. The Archduke supports the Emperor's assistant. He thinks that this looks like the work of a professional villain. It was worthwhile to assume earlier that such an event is an ideal place for an assassination. He says that, however, Atar is only the fourth principle. Far from the struggle for the throne, the empire of Tain is unlikely to spoil relations with Ataloya because of such as Otar. He is sure that everything will be resolved quietly, so she cannot worry. Soon all charges against her will be dropped, so he even promised that he will personally handle this matter. Lily wondered if he was really a secondary character. He was incredibly handsome, and there was also a feeling that their meeting was not accidental. Out of the blue, she trips and falls right on top of him, which immediately makes it awkward. It's some amazing coincidence. The girl always trips around the guys she likes. Lily apologized and explained that she was too tired and probably wasn't paying attention, which is why she tripped. She thanked him for catching her, otherwise she could have hit her head very hard on the floor, and it is very hard. This guy interested her so much that she even wanted to get to know him better, but she thought that he was unlikely to be interested. There is clearly some kind of connection between them. They both feel it, but at the same time, the girl is afraid of being too intrusive. You never know. Maybe she just imagines it. When she was already thinking about moving on, he said that he was very glad that they could communicate. That is, he was already at the very least not too neutral towards her. He shows minimal interest, and she really likes it. Lily asked him the first question, whether they had met before, and apologized if this was not their first meeting. She said in advance that they have a very bad memory and will always have problems with it, and he reacted as if she hinted that, in fact, they had met and more than once. In fact, with these words, he simply wanted to interest her, but in fact, even being close to His Majesty, he spent all his time on the battlefield, so there was no opportunity to meet her, and they still saw each other today for the first time, as she thought. And then he says the phrase that interested her the most, namely that soon she herself will find out about everything, and he doesn't need to explain anything, especially since they will now have to see each other often. But why didn't he say, in fact, Lily definitely won't be against it. She's only happy about it, although she tried to hide it, just so he wouldn't think that she fell in love with him at first sight and would be happy with any meeting. Meanwhile, he had already taken her to the tower, made sure that she didn't go anywhere, and only after a while left to do his business. As soon as she entered her room, a notification appeared that Atar was no longer in the list of characters. Such a person no longer exists. He just disappeared. There is no information about him now, and with the rest, everything is fine for now, but everything can change at any moment. Even though he was very cruel, even though he was a real villain, she still felt very sorry for him. Lily didn't think that she would miss this man, but it is what it is. In the meantime, we must not forget that while she has free time, she must use it to the maximum and not waste it in vain. At the moment, naturally, she's most interested in the Archduke, who she liked too much at first sight. He's probably something special, and there's something interesting about him here. She just started finding out information about him in the system. It turned out that such a character does not exist. She did not even find another person with the same name. Although this cannot exist. Maybe he is such a minor character that there is no information about him, so much so that you can't even find him by name. Suspicious, because the assistant Ella is also a secondary character, but there is some information about her. This character couldn't have deliberately deleted information about himself because he doesn't have access to the system and he doesn't have such opportunities because he's not even the main character. The girl is completely confused. Now he seems even more interesting to her. The main thing is that this interest does not lead her to serious and unpleasant consequences. Suddenly, it is better to stay away from him altogether, and she may not guess about it yet. She even felt a little uneasy. Too many questions were arising, but there were no answers to any of them. She is also very worried about the last phrase. Supposedly, they will soon see each other very often, and that she herself will understand everything. These words literally won't leave her head, and the more she thinks about it, the closer she gets to going crazy. And if you remember that there is no information about the main character anywhere either, everything somehow suspiciously coincides because she didn't find anything about him either. It is impossible to understand what she should do now, who to communicate with, where to go, where to be, and in general, is it worth figuring this out at all? The girl just closed her eyes, then opened them, and began to see a very familiar room in front of her, but did not immediately understand that this was the same room in which she lived before. Lily is so used to this world that she no longer remembers what the world in which she lived her whole life looks like. Everything there is very gray, ordinary, uninteresting, but so familiar that it evokes very pleasant sensations. She doesn't understand yet what it is. It's like a dream, but it all feels too realistic. Lily understands that she couldn't possibly go back there because there's still a lot ahead. She hasn't even gone halfway. And then she sees the game screensaver on her computer, but she is also on it among all the characters, and of course, she couldn't help but notice it. The girl was so happy she even pulled the power cord out of the socket, so she would definitely not go back and stay here. Words cannot express how happy she is to feel like she is back in the past, which she missed so much. I wonder what's going on. Lily is trying to wake up, but she can't, as if this is reality and she doesn't need to go through any more levels. Some time passes, and she begins to feel like a character from the game. Then back, and even a couple of times in the mirror, she saw herself in the image of the character. When suddenly she opens her eyes again, the girl is all tearful, her will be the emperor, and says that for several hours he could not wake her up. Something seemed to prevent her from waking up. He realizes that it was just a dream and has nothing to do with reality. She is still here and hasn't gone anywhere. She has two ambiguous feelings. At the very least, she finds it more interesting here and now. She herself doesn't know whether she wants to return to that ordinary reality, where all she did was sit on the computer and never really go outside or talk to anyone. Lily didn't notice how she started crying. She can't control herself and even stops hearing what this person is telling her. Most likely, it's something like overwork. Lily can't handle so many problems anymore. Her thoughts are constantly busy with something, and she's already forgotten when she last rested. Apparently, that's why it's so hard for her to come to her senses after a deep sleep. But the Emperor doesn't care. He ordered her to get up immediately and wipe away her tears, because he needs to ask her something. And while she's in this state, nothing will work out for sure. The thing is that Noah told him something, which means he wants to talk to her about this, about what happened yesterday in the garden. For the first time in a long time, she had the opportunity to choose an answer. But this time, they were all golden. In the first, deny, pretending not to know anything. The second, and what does it matter to you? The third, honestly admit everything. I wonder what she will do now, considering the fact that now she can say not only what the system offers, but also something of her own. In the end, Lily said that she just went to the garden to get some fresh air, but Lord Noah stopped her. Then suddenly Atar appeared and sent him away, and after that he wanted to do something weird with her. So she hit him and ran away so that he wouldn't catch up with her and take revenge, which was quite likely. The Emperor didn't quite understand what it meant, something strange, and asked her to explain it because he didn't quite understand her. Lily did not lie and continued to tell the truth that the very object that was on the neck of the deceased, he initially wanted to put it on her, and after she ran away, she heard that the prince died. She was so surprised that she went back to check and swore that she was telling the pure truth. And then something starts to change. His level of sympathy has changed, but it is not yet clear whether this means that she will no longer see options in the dialogue with him. It's very offensive, but he didn't take it as the truth. He thinks that she's blatantly lying and advises her not to do it again. Lily was very upset, as usual, when she tries to tell everything as it was. She is believed less than when she really lies. After this conversation, the emperor went to talk to Noah. He wants to clarify something else with him, and even hints that when he returns, he will punish her for deceiving her and will no longer allow her to behave so brazenly. Finally, he says the phrase that he would never have thought that she was the kind of person who could hit a man in the face, as if he himself would have acted differently in her place. He doesn't like that she's so harmless around him, but it turns out that she's capable of hitting a person. So he left her in this room alone with her thoughts. Lily, at first glance, looks pretty good, but inside she has something crazy going on. Never before had there been such intense events, and all this in one day, as if her endurance was being tested. She had already forgotten about this Duke. She began to think about what that dream meant, what it meant, and was there really some kind of sign or hint there again? The girl knows only one thing, that she must not stop, and the only problem is that she needs to somehow get out of the room. But she can't do this. She has to remember and think about it right on the bed, because she is not given any other choice. She begins to dislike the fact that the more time she spends in this world, the less she can remember certain moments from the past. She can no longer remember even the most important moments in her past life. They are too blurry, and probably this is done on purpose. Now Lily would be very happy to receive even a minor hint, at least some kind of clue or sign, to make it easier to move on. But nothing like that has happened yet. She spent the whole day locked up, and because of that, she is even more upset. And in the meantime, someone was having tea. At such a late hour, two people met who were impossible to imagine together. Noah Deverne didn't expect the guy to come all the way here, and of course he couldn't ignore his visit, because he was such a respected person. It turns out that Duke Fenrich came to see him, although he himself did not think that he would have some important meeting today. Everything was decided at the very last moment, and now they are sitting opposite each other and drinking tea, preparing for a conversation. Noah assumes that the Duke came to investigate the death of the Prince of Atar. There is no other reason why he would appear here. About half an hour has passed, and the Duke is silently drinking his tea and is in no hurry to ask anything, as if he doesn't think that everyone is already tired and it's time to rest. The guy asked him for the sake of decency how the tea was, and said that it was made from rare tea leaves that were brought from the north. It turns out that the Duke rarely drinks such drinks. He doesn't like most varieties, but this tea seemed unusual to him. He even wanted to take some home for himself. Noah says he's honored that he tried the tea and slowly started to develop the conversation so that it would end faster. When the guy said that he had heard a lot about the Duke, he was a little upset because usually nothing good is said about him. They always say only bad things about him. So he became interested in finding out what exactly Noah had heard about him. In fact, he said this only for the sake of decency, and like other people, he only knows bad things about him. And now it's probably better not to talk about it. He can't say that he knows him as a cruel Duke who destroys everything and everyone in his path. In short, the Duke is called a real monster and has been for a very long time, and he himself knows it. Noah didn't try to deceive anyone. He says that, like everyone else, he has heard all sorts of cruel stories. But he believes that this is proof of his unrivaled mastery of the ball, and everyone perceives this information differently. And then the Duke suggests ending the idle chatter and talking about Prince Atar, especially since it's already late and no one wants to stay up late. Noah reminded that he had already told His Majesty everything he knew. He simply met the prince and the lady in the garden at a banquet, after which he bowed and went about his business. The Duke is sure that he is not telling him something, but on the other hand, he is not going to put much pressure on him. He only had to look at Noah with his eyes for him to start saying that he had noticed something strange. It seemed to him that Prince Athar and the lady already knew each other. She said that they had a preliminary agreement, although the girl does not often leave the tower, so she rarely meets with anyone in the palace. The guy understands that it is none of his business, but the situation haunts him. He is sure that something happened between them, and he really wants to know what exactly. Fenrich doesn't like to understand these hints. He asks to say directly what all this means and whether the girl could really be involved in the death of Atar. To which he says that this is just his personal opinion. He does not want to assert anything. Only evidence is needed. The guy didn't really help the Duke. He seemed to have given some information, but it was too little and no conclusions could be made. After that, he started to get up, was going to leave, and Noah said that he was glad to help and started to see the guest off. Before leaving, the two suddenly began to talk about art. Noah even offered to show him something that might interest the Duke. He heard that he had started to get carried away with such things, and of course, he suggested staying for half an hour, especially since no one was in a hurry. He himself is passionate about this business, so he will gladly show his possessions, everything that he has accumulated throughout his life. Everything is collected here. Sculptures created by foreign masters, paintings by wandering artists, skillfully made jewelry. Its collection is quite diverse. And this is the pinnacle of his collection, a monster that he will never give to anyone. And after his death, all this will remain as an inheritance for his children. He doesn't even know what people would have to offer for him to sell this monster to someone. He's priceless. Noah said that he often walks here, comes in and is filled with energy, without which he can no longer live. The guy doesn't allow any of the servants to be here. He's even afraid to touch anything, just to keep everything in its original form. Even the dust is wiped very rarely, only when the collection has to be shown to someone, some respected guests, or if the emperor comes. And then the Duke has a very strange question. He also gives it with such a look as if the situation is getting a little out of control. He asks that if something happens to the owner of the house right now, what is the probability that no one will know about it until tomorrow? Noah didn't quite understand what the guest wanted to say. He had a nervous smile and a feeling that they had come here in vain. The Duke smiled slightly, looked away, and immediately after that pretended that it was a joke. Nothing more. Especially with such valuable items collected here, Noah can easily attract thieves, so you should be careful. The second event, it begins with a single letter. Shortly after the banquet on the occasion of the coronation, the remnants of the former faction of the emperor, folded by Dietrich, were arrested. The emperor ordered to get rid of traitors who dared to speak out against the empire, and this decision was not discussed. The assistant brings some letter to His Majesty and says that they found it with one of the traitors. Then he called the girl to him and began to ask how a secret that only she knew could be indicated in a letter. At first glance, it looks like she betrayed him and has long been on the side of those he wants to punish. The letter said the following: "The emperor weeps at the grave of his late mother, the empress, every year on the day of her death, which only his girlfriend, who was always nearby, knew about. No one else knew this information. After this, Lily was immediately put in a cage. She asked to believe her, begged to be let out of here, and swore that she was not guilty. From this point on, depending on what the character meets, the path and history of development is determined. Due to the death of Atar and errors with Dietrich, Lily is not sure that the event will go well. It is very unlikely. Even after checking everything, she didn't find anything unusual in the system, and this really confuses her because this shouldn't be happening. She looked at the map again, and this time she noticed something she had never noticed before. But now it was as if something new had appeared. There is some church on the map. She has no idea what kind of place it is and whether it was there before. Lily is sure that this is definitely some new location. There is no way she hasn't noticed it before. Suddenly, some assistant enters the room. The girl did not have time to hide the screen and thought that the maid might see something unnecessary. She started covering it with her hands, although it was not necessary. For other people, this screen is not noticeable. The maid came to say that they had a guest and Lily should have greeted him and been polite. Lily couldn't even imagine that he would come to her. The Duke has apparently recently taken a liking to visiting. He probably wants to find out something from her too, and thus continues his investigation. The guy apologized if he had caused any inconvenience with his visit. She, the girl, replied that everything was fine and he didn't even have to worry about it. Fenrich says that they have something to discuss, but it's not anything serious. It's just better to do it now than to put it off until later. He began to tell that this morning Prince Atar and his retinue returned to the empire, and apparently this issue would be settled without any complications. Lily asked if they had managed to find out who was behind the death, to which he said that unfortunately they had not yet established this. However, everyone stubbornly continues a thorough investigation, regardless of diplomatic relations with the Tang Empire. The girl understood that this was why he came to her, and then explained that she had already told His Majesty everything, and she had no new information yet. After that, the Duke very quickly changed the subject, started talking over tea, which he really liked. Although this month they saved a little on it, and this tea is not as expensive as usual. The girl didn't say this. She was surprised because she didn't think that less expensive tea could be better in some way than the most expensive one. Strangely, now for some reason he started talking about flowers and asked why she didn't like them, although she didn't even say anything about it. The guy noticed that there were empty vases everywhere, so he thought that they don't like flowers in this house. They would be everywhere, especially since it's the season now. Immediately after this, the Duke reminded her that she might not have heard about it, but in a few days there would be a festival in the city. Flags will be raised, traders from different countries will arrive, and the air will be filled with music during the festival. Flags woven from flowers, a sight that cannot but please. The Duke is sure that she must be there, and apparently he wants to be next to her at this moment. It's not just for nothing that he started talking about it and is now smiling as if he's leading us to go there together. The girl says that it sounds great. She already wants to go there and will happily wait for that very day. Only everything would be wonderful, but there is one problem. She can't leave this place, and he knows about it. The guy says the phrase that sometimes you need to go against the rules to get a taste of life and try something new. Otherwise, life will be boring and uninteresting. The next day had already arrived. Lily told her assistant that she was planning to go outside, and naturally, a small conflict began. She thinks that she doesn't need to do this, especially since the lady will let everyone around her down and not just herself. Lily says she urgently needs to go to church. The next event is about to start. This is her only chance. She needs to hurry and check if there are any clues there. The assistant no longer knows how to stop her. She tries to explain that the girl cannot do this, and if she wants to leave the tower, she must first get permission from His Majesty. Lily reminded that it was just a 10-minute walk and she wasn't going to do anything bad. The girl offered two options, to go with her or to stay here, after which the assistant immediately thought about whether to let her go alone or to go with her. Most likely she was weighing which option would allow her to avoid problems. The maid is ready to agree to this, but only on one condition. The lady will simply go into the church and return immediately, and also will try to cope in less than half an hour. Only under this condition will she be calm. In the end, Lily agrees, although she is not sure that she will be able to fulfill the promise. The main thing for her now is to get out of the tower, and everything else will come later, and she will deal with it later too. At some point, the girl remembered that very vase and asked who brought it here. The assistant thought about it because she didn't remember anything like that. I only saw that Lily once held it in her hands and can say with certainty that none of the maids could have done this. As the girl thought no one brought this vase, she begins to remember and seems to remember a certain day very well. At the beginning of her journey to win sympathy, after she died dozens of times and went through severe trials and confinement, she returned to the tower, covered in bruises. Since then, having gone through the same event hundreds of times, she found solace in these flowers and looked at them very often. But she has no idea who was constantly bringing them, if not the maids and not her. But this can be sorted out later, and in the meantime, she has already come to church. Luckily, there was no one nearby, but it is still unclear whether it is prayer time or not. Everything is too quiet around. She calmly opens the door, thinking that if she gets caught somewhere here, it's impossible to even imagine what Dietrich will do to her for this. The girl just opened the door, looked in front of her and saw the silhouette of a guy with blonde hair, and thought that it was the emperor who would punish her at that very second. Because of this, she almost lost consciousness, even fell to the floor, and began to be afraid to say a word to him. Lily justifies herself by saying that it is not at all the one he might have thought, and promises that she will return soon and that she will fulfill any of his wishes, if only he would not get angry. But when she opened her eyes, she saw a guy in front of her. But it was definitely not the emperor. She just confused him with him, and from the outside it looked a little funny. The guy held back, didn't say anything and didn't even laugh. Lily had no idea who he was, but immediately noticed how handsome he was. He is like an angel from some fairy tale. His blue eyes look into the soul. You want to look into them as long as possible. And now she understood the phrase when they say that you want to drown in someone's eyes. When this guy took half a step, she thought that he was going to give her his hand. She was pleasantly surprised. She was about to give hers, but she saw him just passing by, and she apparently misunderstood him and was too happy. It was a very ugly act on his part. Lily felt even more awkward, and now she hardly wants to ever meet this man again. At the very least, she didn't even do anything to him, but he reacted as if they had been enemies for a long time. The girl tried, because she didn't come here just like that, but with one goal, and there is no point in being upset about this situation for a long time. We need to move on. But as soon as Lily looked ahead, she saw something. Why she wasn't ready and doesn't even know what it all means. All the statues fell to the floor. Not a single one remained intact. It looks as if some monster walked through here and destroyed everything around. Meanwhile, literally a couple of seconds later, a man comes in. He saw what was happening, didn't even try to figure anything out, thought that it was all her. The girl had a fragment of the statue just from the sight of this whole picture. It seems like he is about to lose consciousness. He called her a villain. He began to feel bad because these are sacred statues and you won't find them anywhere else. He already imagined what the consequences would be, grabbed his head and didn't even have the strength to say anything else. I had to invite him to talk. They sat down at the table and Lily began to tell him everything from the very beginning, how it was, at least what she saw, because she was no less surprised than he was. She says that, firstly, today was her first time in church, which means she wouldn't do something like that without knowing where the emergency exits are and how often people come here. And secondly, she has no reason to destroy anything because she's never been interested in such things. The man replied that today he had seen only her and no one else here, to which she responded and said that as soon as she entered the church, I met a guy I saw for the first time in my life, and he was in a bad mood and left very quickly, without even extending his hand. This could mean that he was in a hurry to leave this place, and it is possible that he could be involved in a crime. His robe was very similar to that of a priest, but this is only at first glance. Lily remembers that she did not see any object in his hands with which he could destroy everything here, and his appearance does not resemble a villain, but still, it is definitely worth learning more about him. This is the only suspect, and here the man asks her to swear that she is not deceiving him, and she does it with a clear conscience. In that case, he is obliged to ask the Imperial Guard to conduct an investigation. The only thing that worries her is that no one finds out that she was here, and if the girl says this, she will only add suspicion to her side. Out of the blue, the man starts telling a story about one statue, and started by saying that in the west of the continent, there used to live a cursed creature. It was followed by epidemics, curses, and the deaths of a huge number of people. All this lasted for a very long time. For countless years, mankind has struggled to get rid of it. In the process, thousands of warriors and tens of thousands of knights have died. And then the real hero that everyone had been waiting for appeared, the one who silenced this creature forever. Although this happened long before the creation of Ataloya, every inhabitant of Ataloya praises the hero, in whose honor a festival of conquest is held every year. She became interested in what kind of creature it was. The girl had never heard this information and was even ready to spend a little time on it to understand this point more deeply. This creature was called Mawan. For some reason it was called that way, and to this day, no one has found out the reason. Ella comes in unexpectedly. Her face is literally gone. She is very upset and is trying not to cry. The girl thought she had bad news for her, but the news turned out to be worse than she could have imagined. His Majesty the Emperor, he suddenly felt very ill. He is lying on the bed and all in sweat. At the same time, it seems like he is not sick. He is not overworked. Nothing like that should happen, but something is wrong with him. Since there is no information about this, everyone is very scared. The doctors say that they cannot help, and the emperor can only lie on the bed. The guy had been complaining of a headache since dawn, and then suddenly lost consciousness, and then everyone realized that he had something serious. In fact, everyone was surprised not only because it happened, But because this particular person is famous for his excellent health, he had never been sick before, which is why the situation caused so much panic. No one has an explanation for this. And in the meantime, to help, that instead of the emperor, they brought here a man who will be able to replace him for some time, at least in some situations. This is the same Duke. Seeing him, the girl froze in one place, because she does not yet understand whether this is good or bad. She has a lot of questions, but she doesn't know when to ask them correctly now or later, and in general, she has no idea what to do now. There is a feeling that everything may be much more complicated than it seems. Maybe all this is not a coincidence, but these are just guesses. Out of the blue, the Duke begins to suspect this man of something. He says that even if this is an investigation, isn't he keeping Lily here for too long? After all, it's already clear to everyone that she didn't do it, to which he replies that he just wanted to hear what happened here. The Duke says he heard that after Lady Lily entered the church, the Archbishop witnessed what happened. Given the circumstances, he does not understand why all these questions were asked not to the guards but to her. The guy reads that you can't interrogate an innocent person like that, especially since there are plenty of other people around who could have been involved in this. In the end, he offers the girl to leave here with him. He is not going to tolerate that someone accuses her without having any evidence. She looked at him with such eyes as if he had saved her, although she had done nothing wrong anyway. On the way, the girl again told that she saw only one person there, and that she was a little upset that everything happened just at the moment when she went there. So they are walking around some area. At some point, the girl notices that she talks too much, and all he does is listen to her. Lily noticed this and immediately stopped, because she thought that he also wanted to say something, but she did not let him do it. Although nothing like that happened, she is a little ashamed of her behavior. Lily thinks that she is just wasting his time. Although if there was some problem with this, he would have already said so a long time ago and would not have suggested going for a walk. On the contrary, once that she is comfortable with him, that she is so talkative and does not remain silent, although he thought that it would be so. Lily really talks to him very easily. She herself doesn't know why it happens. Probably she just feels something and understands that she can relax with him. Despite the fact that they are not the most pleasant rumors, she knows him from a completely different side. They talked a little more about various topics, tried not to touch on anything serious, because it was just a regular walk and there were very few such moments anyway. And then something interesting started to happen. They came back to this situation again, and the guy proposed a bet. If something really bad happens because of this, then he loses. But if everything goes quietly, then Lily loses. In the end, the loser fulfills the winner's wish, and it will be a secret until the end. The guy asks if she is ready for this or not, to which she replies that maybe she would agree, but she might not have enough opportunities to fulfill the Duke's wish. He suggests thinking about it after everything is over. Lily agrees, but she decided to ignore the fact that she might not like the wish. For some reason, she wants to trust him. He has such a warm look that if he needed to, he would make her do anything. Meanwhile, he had already escorted her to the tower, made sure she went to her room, everything as usual. The girl looked at him from the balcony. She liked the walk and even wanted them to repeat it in the near future. She is delighted with this person. She feels very comfortable with him, like with no one else, and every time it is too hard to part. The Duke charmed her at first sight, but it is not yet clear whether it was on purpose or not, and whether he even knows about it. It's just a pity that once this event ends, the storyline will change, and she will never see Fenrich again. It won't be easy to come to terms with the fact that someone like him, the only one who had ever been kind to her, will soon leave her life, and there will be those left around who would be better off not staying. Meanwhile, the Emperor wakes up. All this time he was in a dream, and then suddenly he woke up and also so scared, as if he had seen a nightmare. His breathing has increased. He is starting to run out of air, and it would be good if one of his assistants were nearby. Judging by his words, this is not the first time this has happened. The guy sees the same thing every time, but still everything feels too realistic, and during sleep there is no feeling that he has seen it before. Since that day, every single day he has nightmares, dreams in which he destroys lilies over and over again. He starts to dislike it. He is not going to do anything like that in real life, and his mood gets spoiled for the rest of the day. On the one hand, he realizes that this is just a dream, but on the other hand, it destroys him very much from the inside. There he heard her screams, looked into her eyes, saw her suffering and could do nothing about it, as if someone was controlling his body. So he tried to think for more than half an hour. It was not easy, and only now someone came into his room. This is one of the assistants who periodically entered the room to check if everything was okay. He is very glad that this time the gentleman woke up, said that it was already dawn and he slept the whole day, and if necessary, he can call a doctor. The emperor asked not to do this, said that he was already feeling much better and it would not be necessary. The assistant did not think that now was not the time for this. Out of habit, he began to report all the news, namely about the commotion that happened this afternoon, that there was an intruder in the church who destroyed all the statues, so much so that they can no longer be restored. And the first witness was Lily, who was ordered to stay in the tower, so the emperor found out what was not necessary. Sir, he clearly remembers that he ordered her to stay in the tower, and now one can only guess what she will get for this. The assistant said that she went to pray for the health of the emperor, but became a witness to the attacker and was almost suspected of something she did not do. The first thought that came to His Majesty was that the girl might be connected with the villain and perhaps, and not at the same time. The assistant replied that this couldn't be. They had already checked everything, but there was no evidence, and until there was proof, no one was going to accuse her. The emperor is still convinced that she is preparing to escape, and for some reason began to cooperate with the villains. Although these are only thoughts that are not confirmed in reality, the emperor began to remember how it was in childhood. The destruction of the statue in the church was for the sake of creating chaos, but this does not mean that in this situation everything is the same. And also the assistant said that he wanted to say something else. His Majesty received a letter, and literally just recently, they and other servants examined it and found out that it did not contain any curse magic or threats, and it did not have the family crest on it. So they concluded that everything was safe and they could safely open it. His Majesty was immediately interested in what it was. He did not expect any letters and had no idea who could have sent it. Meanwhile, Lily had been in her room for some time. Naturally, after that incident, she did not go out anywhere. And then the maid came to tell her that the emperor was calling her for a talk again. Lily was waiting for this moment. She understands that today everything can end either very badly or just badly. The worst has begun. The emperor can be very angry, and most likely this will be one of the most difficult conversations in all the time, as long as they know each other. The girl is just silent. She stands in front of him and feels how, with every second, her heart starts to beat faster and faster. He was also silent for a while, as if he was escalating the situation and specifically intimidating Lily, who was already shaking all over. Everything is so bad that he didn't even greet her. He immediately said that all this time he underestimated her. After all, even sitting locked up and under surveillance in the tower, she still found a way to negotiate with others, which means he still suspects her. It's a pity that now she has no answer options. It has become very difficult, and there is also a sense of anticipation, as if she doesn't even have to answer these words. This time he doesn't want to hear any excuses anywhere. He orders to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Lily had always been honest with him, but since he wanted to hear the truth, she couldn't do otherwise, and she started saying things he didn't want to hear, but she had to. Namely, that she never told his secret to anyone and did not collude with anyone, as he thinks, is ready to undergo any tests, just to prove that it is true. She even yelled at him a little and asked how he would react if he told the truth dozens of times and no one believed him. Naturally, like any other person in her place, she did not have enough patience. Since the emperor does not understand when she tells him about it calmly, she has to yell. And the reason why she went outside should be known to him anyway. It's not surprising that, being locked up, she at least sometimes wanted to go outside and feel like a human being. The girl is no longer shy. She says everything she thinks, especially since she thinks that no one will believe her in any case. And at least this way, she has the opportunity to throw her emotions out. He listened to her attentively and finally asked how, in her opinion, he should believe it, since everything points to the fact that it was she who did it. At the same time, he doesn't have a single piece of evidence. And in the meantime, suddenly someone came in and Lily didn't even have time to tell him anything. I wonder who it could be. It's unlikely that the emperor would schedule a conversation with two people at the same time. And judging by his reaction, he didn't expect anyone to come to them at all, and he wouldn't even warn them about it, as is customary. Naturally, who could it be if not the Duke, who is very responsible in conducting the investigation, and it seems that now he has come at the right time, more than ever before. She just needs his help. The guy seemed to sense that he was expected here, at least one of them for sure. A little further away, there is a maid who was unable to stop him and was already beginning to fear that she would have to answer for this. Duke Fenrich seems to be in no hurry to explain why he came. He feels very confident in this room and has been for a very long time. Apparently, he has a very good relationship with the Emperor, but this time His Majesty is not concerned with the Duke, and he does not quite understand what is going on. It turns out, as he promised, he conducted a very thorough investigation and explained that it was impossible to postpone this conversation. He brought a real criminal with him, and he is sure that the Emperor was definitely not angry that he prevented him from talking to Lily. According to him, this woman, it was she who colluded with the rebels, and it is she who needs to be punished, not poured. While exploring the church, he looked through the maid's things and found something very interesting. Something that shouldn't have been there. There was a letter written in a special code, and it looks like she has been corresponding with those same rebels for a long time. Her statement that she was probably Lady Lily's maid was a cover story, and to get information from someone close to His Majesty. But that's not all the news he wanted to tell him. The Emperor is already completely mad. He doesn't believe a single word. Although the Duke has more evidence to support his words than he does, and here the most interesting part begins. The Duke told that Noah died, and quite recently, and after these words, Lily simply lost her ability to speak, just like the Emperor. They don't want to believe it, but indeed, the guy was found dead in the estate, and apparently some kind of animal attacked him. Since he had no close friends, the investigation stalled. Coincidentally, almost all the servants were on vacation at the time. His body was discovered too late. This is a very unfortunate situation, but His Majesty seems to doubt these words. He does not understand how there can be some kind of beast in the heart of the capital. Supposedly, it is impossible. Just in case the Emperor would not order him to leave prematurely, he explained that since a foreign prince was being destroyed in the imperial palace and a nobleman in the capital was torn to pieces by a beast, this could not be a simple coincidence and, in his opinion, something urgently needed to be done about it, because no one knew who would be next. Finally, he said that she saw a suspicious man in the church, but if the Emperor had listened to her, he would have found out about it earlier. The Duke asked, "Isn't it strange that the same person is at the center of all the events? And yet, her closest servant has been proven to be connected to the rebels. Maybe Lily is just being set up, and it's the same person doing it." The Emperor asked what the Duke was hinting at, as if he himself had not yet understood anything. But since that was the case, it was not difficult for him to say that. Most likely, Lily had simply become someone's target. According to him, it seems that she has somehow managed to avoid trouble so far, but there is no guarantee that she will be lucky next time. So he humbly suggests that for safety's sake, she be taken out of the palace somewhere far away, and preferably that she be under supervision, with a person who could suddenly protect her. His Majesty seems not to fully understand the situation, and refuses to believe the Duke's words only because he clears Lily of all suspicions. He says he's against it, but if the Duke is telling the truth, he has no reason to keep her here anymore. The Emperor believes that the Imperial Palace is the safest place in the capital, although he has no idea that in reality, this is far from true. As far as they know, the criminal can still move freely within these walls, and it is possible that there is another traitor among the servants. The guy insists that until the truth is known, it would be better for her to hide outside the palace and return when she is provided with safety, and complete safety at that. It seems that the Emperor doesn't even try to understand the situation and protect people. He just wants to punish, and it doesn't matter whether she is guilty or not. Just give him a reason. And here the most interesting part begins. Since His Majesty is not going to think about Lily, the Duke will take care of it. He offers to take care of her personally, especially since he has a secluded estate on the outskirts of the capital, which almost no one knows about. She can stay there and monitor what is happening until the situation calms down. Fenrich reminded that he had sworn allegiance to His Majesty before he ascended the throne, and says that the Emperor can trust him. Somewhere deep down, the Emperor understands that the guy is completely right, that he is doing everything right, But something stops him from agreeing to this idea. And then something happened that the girl did not expect at all. For the first time in all this time, the emperor asked what she wants, as if his final decision depended on it. Naturally, it was very nice. But it was too early to rejoice because she knows this person very well, and everything can change at any moment. He asked her for the last time if she would like to leave the palace, and he asked about it as if he had already decided everything, and did it only because the Duke was nearby. It would seem that there is nothing to even think about here. But what about the game? How can its decision change the entire further path? And most likely, if it raises the tower, it will no longer be able to use the system. There is no information outside the palace. She has no idea what could happen if she makes the wrong choice. No matter how you look at this situation from all sides, the risks are too high, and the emperor is starting to get angry that she is making him wait. Anyway, there is one reason why she would still like to leave here. She just wants to survive, so she replied that she would not mind if, of course, His Majesty allows. She even expressed gratitude for the opportunity and expressed special thanks to the Duke, to whom he proposed this idea. It was very timely. Without him, she would hardly have been able to achieve something like this. And of course, inside she is very happy about it. She just understands that it is better not to show it. It turns out that from this day on, her fate can change beyond recognition. The girl herself does not know what will happen tomorrow, although something tells her that she made the right choice, and it will definitely not get worse. As a result, the emperor asked the Duke to escort the girl outside the palace. Now her safety would be under his responsibility, and the Duke did not mind. Lily only now realized that the only familiar person who will now be in her circle is Fenrich. The main thing is that this person is not a traitor and truly wishes her only the best, not just in words. Now her life will depend to some extent on him, and probably it is better than to remain here in danger. And they decided to lock the maid in the dungeon, and soon there will be an interrogation, and she will tell about everything she knows about those villains with whom she is in league. Right after that, the guy hinted that it was time for them to leave, so to speak. For a new life, it would be temporary. But still, it felt like some new stage and period of life. One can only hope that she will be happy there, and that the guy makes sure that it is really safe there. When they had already started to leave, the emperor looked after them, and at the very last moment pronounced her name, to ask if she wanted to tell him something. Although the girl doesn't quite understand what he wants to hear and what he means. She wasn't even embarrassed to say that she didn't quite understand him and was afraid that he might have time to change his mind. In the end, she thought it was better to talk to them at all, so as not to make things worse. So she replied that she had nothing more to say and that it would be better if she did not stay there for long. All the things are packed, the carriage has arrived. Now nothing is holding it here. You can calmly set off on your journey. This carriage turned out to be much more spacious than all those in which she had traveled before, although this was not often. But such cases did occur. Everything inside is done so well that it is a pleasure to travel on such transport, and even with such a handsome guy next to her, whom she will probably see at least once a day. You can clearly see how she is already delighted with everything that is happening. It's as if she is leaving her old life and going to a new one. The air is very refreshing. Everything around is incredibly beautiful. She enjoys everything that surrounds her and what she sees in front of her. And this has not happened for a very long time. Her thoughts are completely clear. She already wants to see new people, walk along a busy street and eat some dessert, and listen to music that changes depending on the weather. All this is like life from scratch, although it is not quite so. But while there is an opportunity, Lily is happy and sees everything more colorful than it is possible in reality. She is inspired by the spring breeze, the scent of flowers, and most importantly, she no longer has to experience these terrible events that leave her with no strength. Suddenly, a guy knocks on the driver's window and asks him to slow down a little, but not just drive slower, and as slowly as possible, so that the journey would take longer than it otherwise would. He probably did this so that Lily could enjoy the ride longer. Although she didn't notice it, he even now thinks about her and tries to make being around him as comfortable and pleasant as possible. Here they are already there. He helped her out of the carriage, and now she has an even more beautiful view of the mansion. Although the Duke said that it was a small estate, that it would be very modest there, but everything is exactly the opposite. Lily has never seen anything like this and doesn't even know how to react to it. This is a huge mansion, several times larger than the Imperial Palace. The view is really impressive. Everything is like in the picture. The first thing he did was show her her room. She could live here from that day on, but she could choose any other if she wanted. It just seemed to him that this one was bigger than the others and one of the best. There is a fireplace, a table for tea, a bed, storage space, and everything you need, of course. The main thing is safety. It is definitely present here. Lily started to open her suitcase, but when she opened it, she found that there was something in there that gave her mixed feelings. This is the same vase he asked about just recently. Is this really some kind of hint or something like that? She silently looks at it, even put it on the windowsill, and pretended that it didn't cause her any emotions. The guy also pretended that he had nothing to do with it. They ignored this topic, although she would definitely deal with it. But a little later, could it be that the maids were in such a hurry that they put a vase with them, without which the girl could have felt quite comfortable here? Meanwhile, Fenrich suggests going for a walk. Since they are free today and it is not dark outside, there is nothing else to do. You need to go outside, especially since this is a great opportunity to take a tour. Unless, of course, Lily is not too tired. The guy asked if she liked flowers, to which the girl replied that she was neutral about them. But when they were given to her, of course, it was very nice, like any other girl. In the end, they walked very quickly. Lily began to hint that she was very tired, and now she has returned to the room. She no longer had the strength to walk. She lay down on the bed and for some reason felt as if she had been busy with something all day. Today is not the most eventful day, but the girl is already asleep and the Duke does not leave. He sits nearby and watches. He is glad that she was able to relax here, felt at home and slept so deeply. Although he did not even hope for this, he thought that she would not be able to sleep until he left the room, but this is how it is. After some time, the guy came out. He met the maid and asked her to make sure that no one entered this room and repeated that it was very important. He will think about her safety first and foremost, and soon he will think about what else he can come up with, although everything here is already ideal for safe living. The Duke doesn't even know what new thing to come up with, except maybe a huge stone wall, but that's too much. Here he is already entering some room. Probably he also decided to rest, but it doesn't end there. Someone is already in this room and tells him that he hardly recognized this place, and it looks like a newly built estate. But who is this person? For some reason, he also complains that he feels sick from the smell of flowers since the morning. He looks too much like the guy Lily recently saw in church. Is Fenrich hiding something from her? What's most interesting is to find out who this person is and what he's doing here. Doesn't the Duke know what exactly Lily told him about him? In any case, sooner or later, everything will become clear. Meanwhile, this guy tells me that one very unpleasant person has recently become very interested in Lily. He is the Archmage of the Empire, and as far as he knows, they have already started an investigation at Noah Adverna's estate. The Duke replied that it didn't matter, but judging by their conversation, nothing was still clear, and it was a pity. And then it started. The guy was telling him something, but the Duke stopped him and asked him to answer one question. Why did he go to church? And why did he break all the statues? As if he knew that it was definitely him who did it. And also, a very strange phrase was said that nothing like that happened in some way. I wonder what all this means. At the end, one of them said that everything went well and those statues no longer have any meaning. Meanwhile, the guy smiled and said another strange phrase that thanks to the broken statues, they had one more reason to get Lily out of the Imperial Palace. The Duke looks at him as if he is dissatisfied with something, but only one thing is clear. They agreed on something, but what exactly, we can only guess. Everything looks a bit dubious. One can only guess that the girl is really safe, and nothing serious is being hidden from her. Meanwhile, the next day came. Lily forgot a little that she was no longer in the palace, but in another estate, which was very far away. If only she knew that in this house there is that very guy whom she already knows, and from whom she did not have the best impression. She really enjoyed sleeping here. It's comfortable, warm, the bed is huge, and she can't wait for breakfast because she missed dinner yesterday. The girl was glad that it was not a dream, that she really left the Imperial Castle, and now she feels like the happiest person in the world. Lily began to contact the system. She has hope that it has not left her yet, because without it, it will be impossible. The first request was to show the event log or the last memories. At least something from this. Only now she finds out that the system does not work outside the tower. She expected this, but thought that a miracle would happen and the system would still stay with her. Although this is no longer so important, because the available information is already more than enough. Lily turns her head to the side, notices that same vase, but today there are already flowers in it, and also they are fresh, as if someone recently picked them and wanted to make a surprise. It looks very cute, beautiful. All her favorite colors are collected here. The bouquet made her morning even more beautiful. Now she is in the mood for the whole day. She no longer thinks about where they are from, who brought them, when. The girl is simply pleasantly surprised. Some assistant comes in. For some reason she didn't knock, but the girl didn't pay attention to it because she said that it was the Duke who personally put this bouquet here, and she saw it. The maid made a very good first impression. It was very nice to meet her. She is nice and probably very kind. The girl introduced herself. Her name is Hannah. From now on, she will be her servant. Lily can ask her for anything and whenever. The assistant asked how the lady had slept because she had chosen this reversible blanket with special care so that the night would go wonderfully. The girl thanked her for such efforts. She didn't think that I would treat her so well. And in the meantime, Hannah asked what about breakfast. Should she cook it right now, or would the lady like to wash herself first? The girl chose the second option and then asked why the assistant was still there, because she didn't need help. She could handle it perfectly well herself, but Hannah couldn't hold back, started hugging her and confessed how long she had waited for this house to have not only a master, but also a mistress. Not only Khan was happy about this news, but also some others. Some, because half of the staff doesn't care about it, and some do. The girl even asked her to let go. She was not used to such closeness because she had never had anything like this in her life before. She had never had a single friend or sister with whom she would hug like that. Hannah understood everything and immediately apologized if it was too much, but Lily said that everything was fine and that she just needed to get used to it. Meanwhile, a heavy downpour began outside. The weather deteriorated unnoticed, and meanwhile, in the northern magic tower, in the capital of the empire of Ataloi, some kind of meeting is taking place. Several people gathered, Commander Siegfried, Grand Duke Fenrich, and the Archmage, which means the conversation will be about something serious. It all started with a conflict. They had already had a little argument, although this happens very often, and there is nothing unusual about it. What interests them most is the fact that one scented candle was found in Noah's house. But it is unusual, and that is why so much attention was paid to it. Although it was almost completely burned, traces of the moon plant were found in it. Someone deliberately used this plant and the monster to destroy the man, and they have almost no doubt about it. Moreover, this plant grows only in the forbidden forest, where it is forbidden to enter without special permission. Then in a forgotten place there is a lair of monsters. Too few people know about it, but Fenrich has been there and understands what we are talking about. Even if a person wants to get in there, it will be very difficult. It is also difficult to believe that the villain is an ordinary person. The one who is able to deal with those monsters and freely pass through the forbidden forest, they don't even have any idea who it could be. It's interesting to find out how Noah interfered with such a person, how they can even know each other. This is what needs to be found out first of all. One of them says he heard Lady Lily ran into someone suspicious and thinks they need to deal with him first. The Duke replied that it was very logical, but they had no plan, and without it they could go around in circles for a very long time without finding out anything. Immediately after this, the conversation turned to what concerns Lady Lily, or rather, her safety. Fenrich repeated that the palace is guarded by knights, and this is the safest place for her. Besides, he will personally supervise everything. Meanwhile, he had already returned home, immediately saw her in the garden, and was actually a little surprised. He had never seen her like this before, and didn't think that red suited the girl so much, even too much. She is wearing a gorgeous dress that looks absolutely stunning on her, as if she is going to some important event and not just walking around the palace. Lily is especially beautiful today, and I wonder if the Duke will compliment her on this. He didn't pass by, asked how she was doing, and naturally he wanted to hear that everything was fine. That's exactly what he promised. And then he asked how she liked the new house, although he already knew that she was absolutely delighted. The girl started telling how everything was gorgeous here, how she liked everything, and she relaxed so much that she slept for half a day, although she wasn't very upset. In the end, he is very happy to hear all this. There is no need to worry, at least for this reason. Then he simply suggested taking a walk around the mansion because there is still a lot around that she definitely did not have time to see. On the second floor, there is a library with books from all over the continent, and in the different rooms you can find clothes and jewelry that she will definitely like. The girl replied that Hannah had already shown her everything. She had already seen everything and was even a little tired of walking around the area. It was so huge. Lily can't get used to the Duke's generosity because he has given her everything and asked for nothing in return. She is not used to it. She constantly wants to thank with something, but she does not even deliver what she can give to a person who has everything. He said right away, which immediately improved this day many times, that her joy is the best gratitude that one can think of. And he needs to hear that she would like to give him something in return, because he is not interested in anything like that. He does it just like that. Lily admitted that she never thought that she deserved such treatment, and that she feels what she dreamed of feeling all her life: freedom, happiness, joy, and all this constantly, without any problems or unpleasant situations. Nothing happened that day that could spoil her mood. Lily doesn't even know how to put her feelings into words. The guy reminded that, first of all, this is being done for her safety, and also hinted that, who knows, maybe he will want to leave her forever, or maybe she herself will ask about it someday. She feels very awkward discussing all this, and every time it seems that all this luxury and idyll could end at some point, and it would be very offensive. After that, they didn't go anywhere. They stopped noticing how time goes by. The guy even said that he used to be an ordinary person and also didn't think that all this could become his possession. Not knowing his parents since childhood, he had to beg one day, get beaten the next, and at some point he even got used to it. It seemed to him that one day it would all end with him simply dying on the street from hunger. But on his 13th birthday, his life changed once and for all. Something happened that turned his life upside down, but he never told what exactly, and the girl didn't dare ask about it. It wasn't for nothing that he kept silent at that moment. Apparently, it wasn't time for such a revelation. They still don't know each other very well. Surprisingly, because of his aura, she was sure that he was from a noble family. But now that she learned more about him, the girl admires the Duke because he has reached such heights, and it is impressive. Strangely, to this day, he doesn't think he's done the best he could, as if there's anything else he dreams about. It was a very exciting conversation. They didn't even notice how they stood in the same place, although they could have walked around the garden. Lily returned to her room towards evening, didn't even change her clothes, sat on the bed and thought. She noticed that the Duke was somehow different today than usual. The atmosphere was unusual, as if something had changed. And then I thought that now is not the time, and there is no need to rush with the investigation, especially since this game has an end date. The so-called choice day. You need to choose one main character and find out if you manage to achieve a good ending. According to the system, the maximum sympathy is equal to 100 points. It is achieved only if the right choice is made with the chosen character on that day. If you choose incorrectly and don't get 100 points, you'll get a bad ending and you won't be able to change anything. Even with the right choice, if the overall score is low, a bad ending is unavoidable. Now that the girl doesn't even know who the real protagonist is, she needs to find an answer urgently. Time is running out. Something she hadn't thought about before, something she had missed, and there was enough time. Now everything will have to be done at the very last moment. And then she remembers some training. If the main character is not from the palace, the clue can only be there. The story of Lily from 10 to 15 years old. The girl saw it only once, when she first moved into this body, and if you think about it, she learned the main plot by heart from hundreds of repetitions and almost forgot the training. In the end, everything ends with the punishment of the mother. This period was the most difficult period in the girl's entire life. She saw her mother's death with her own eyes. But more on that later. In the meantime, in any case, if the main character of the day is from the palace, she can't cope alone. Everything has only become more complicated. She is already thinking about asking someone for help if this is not possible at all. Without thinking twice, she decided to come to the Duke without warning, but she chose the wrong moment and will soon understand everything herself. She opens the door. apologizes for maybe disturbing him, looks closer and sees that the guy is standing there almost naked. He turns towards her. Unlike her, he reacts calmly, but Lily almost tripped and fell. Most likely he was going to take a shower, and if she had arrived a couple of minutes later, she would not have seen anything on him at all. So, we can assume that she is still on time. Although it would have been better to warn, she hid behind the door and said that she would probably come later. She felt very ashamed, but the guy came up to her and said that everything was fine because nothing terrible had happened. He allowed her to enter the room. He would probably take a shower a little later. The girl was just used to the fact that such situations were usually punished, so she felt guilty. Although she really did interfere with him and could have warned him, he reacted quite normally, for which she is very grateful to him. And yet she says that she came to ask for some map and explained that she was sitting in the tower, when suddenly she became interested in what the outside world looks like. Although this is a legend, and in fact she needs the map for something else. Unlike how it was usually, when she was always refused everything, the Duke tries not to do this, and even said that tomorrow morning he would take her to a place where she could find this map and look at it as much as she wanted. It's understandable that in such a situation, it would become difficult to ignore his body. She looked for literally 1 second and noticed an interesting tattoo. On the left side, it depicts a large tree. It has many branches and leaves, and it is all black. There is not a single colored area there, but what interests her most is the fact that usually such a thing is rare among the nobility. The guy immediately noticed that she was interested in it, but it turns out that this is not just a drawing. He added leaves to these branches every time something difficult happened in his life. Now she looks at this friend. It is really impressive, and it doesn't look as simple as when she first saw it. Out of the blue, Fenrich somehow came too close to her and said that he had a small favor to ask of her. Lily asked how she could help, and now she doesn't even know what he's interested in and why he turned to her about it, because he has plenty of assistants who can do more than she can. Right after that, he reminded about their recent pairing, which he successfully won, and probably wants to hint that it's time for someone to have one wish fulfilled. She asked what he needs, and at that moment he smiled in such a way that she even got goosebumps. Apparently he thought about it in advance, and was already ready to tell her what she would have to do. Strangely, because of asking for something, he suggested making a wish tonight, although it is not entirely clear what that means and why they should do it together. The guy promised to come back for her tonight, and now the time has come when she is eagerly awaiting Fenrich. He is so intrigued that it is impossible to sit still. The assistant also helped a little. She did a light hairdo, updated the lady's makeup, and picked out a new dress. She said that it wouldn't be superfluous. But the problem is that all the dresses suit her. The assistant is already doubting which one is better, because they all look perfect. But the girl is not thinking about this at that moment. She has never tried on such expensive dresses. It is still unusual that she needs to change several looks a day, and this is considered normal and not a luxury at all. Meanwhile, the gentleman comes. He asks the assistant if she really wants to tire him out before everything he has planned starts. And of course, it was just a joke. He is very pleased that Hannah is so passionate about her work, devotes herself to it completely, but still, they have little time, and it would be nice to hurry. The guy said a few compliments indeed. The girl looks stunning. Everything really suits her. Lily thought so much about what he had prepared for her that she seemed afraid of being disappointed in going there, which was worse than everything she had already imagined. The girl is a little sad. We should hope that he will surprise her, and this evening will go in the best possible way. This time he decided to go on horseback, not in a carriage, and probably it was not just like that. She did not ask unnecessary questions. There is a small problem. The girl has never ridden a horse before and has no idea how it will happen. In any case, she really likes to try something new, and everything is not as bad as it could be, especially since the guy is nearby, and if something happens, he will definitely tell you. He asked her to let him help. Lily herself would not be able to jump. He picked her up in his arms and sat her down in his place. It was a light extreme, but everything is just beginning. They are just getting on the horse and nothing special happened. Then he sat behind her and asked if Lily was ready to trust him and go to a very interesting place. It was immediately clear to him that she was afraid. It was not difficult to guess that this was her first time, so he said that fears exist in order to be overcome. It's getting darker outside. A beautiful moon and stars have appeared. Everything is too romantic, but perhaps it's better not to pay attention to it now. They are not close enough for him to arrange dates for her, although it is not yet clear how it will all end. Meanwhile, they arrived at a very busy place. It was full of people. Everyone was buying, selling, rejoicing. The whole street was decorated from beginning to end. It all looks like some kind of small festival, but the girl still doesn't understand what it means and why they came here. She asked, "Is this really the same desire? How is it connected? Is it really true that now she will have to disgrace herself or interact with these people?" Fenrich reminded how he talked about the festival, where traders from different countries gather and flags made of flowers flutter. But now Lily begins to understand everything. But really, how come she didn't think of this before? And his wish sounds like this: to enjoy this festival with her. At some point, a guy was passing by and accidentally pushed the girl, causing her to stumble badly. It was very unexpected, but the man apologized and explained that it happened completely by accident. That guy had already moved on. Fenrich began to hold the girl, and every time something like this happens, their walk looks more and more like an attempt to get closer. He acts like a very polite guy, openly says that he wants to spend the evening with her, and her whole face turns red because everything is more than understandable. After that, he even took her hand. The man seemed to not hide his intentions, and perhaps it was even for the best. Maybe she just likes such persistent guys who don't like to wait long. He explained this by saying that there were too many people around, and it would be easy to get lost in such an environment. They hadn't gone far when she saw a stall with flowers, or rather with beautiful wreaths made from different flowers. Then they went to the vegetable section. She saw many different and unusual items there, and even that impressed her. Lily had a hard time skipping some of the stalls, because if she stopped at each one, they wouldn't have time to enjoy the festival. She has already forgotten the last time she was so happy. The girl feels very happy and does not want to leave anywhere from here. She likes smiling people. This whole atmosphere, everything here is like in a fairy tale. And even better, when suddenly she accidentally notices a strange man in a black cloak who looks little like the one who came here to have fun. After that, they went even further and saw another man in a cloak, but it was already a child who was sitting on the floor and selling. Lily asked the Duke to look at him because maybe they could help him with something or at least give him some money for food. She felt very sorry for this boy. He doesn't even have shoes, and it's possible that he will have to spend the night here too. The boy saw that he was noticed and was a little happy because usually no one even looks in his direction. Those people who came here to relax, they don't care about the rest, especially those who need help. And in the meantime, Fenrich already wants to buy a flower from him, but not alone. He asked to sell him all the flowers that were here and even gave more money than they were all worth. The girl is glad that they didn't pass by. She really loves doing good deeds, but she didn't have the opportunity to do it before. In the end, they got a gorgeous bouquet, which of course, the Duke gave to Lily. He told her that he didn't think she was so kind. He even felt ashamed that he would have passed by and bought these flowers only because of her. Even though the mansion is already full of flowers, there is nowhere to put them. But the main thing is that they did a good deed, and that child will not freeze on the street, at least today. He is very pleased to see her enjoying this evening, which means everything turned out better than he expected. In those half an hour, he saw her as a new person, and what he liked most was that she was very kind. As soon as they returned to the main street, something happened, and Lily didn't even have time to immediately realize what had happened. There was a very loud sound, even too loud. But as it turned out, everything was not as scary as they thought. The girl even turned away. She was scared, and unfortunately, she didn't see something very beautiful, something she had never seen before. In fact, it was the most ordinary fireworks. It is always too loud and you have to get used to it. It is worth it. She even paid a little. Her whole face is covered in small drops, as if someone poured a bucket of water on her. It was very hard for her to calm down. The evening was almost ruined, although who would have thought that she would react to it like that? At first, the guy thought that everything was fine. She would quickly get used to it, but unfortunately, nothing like that happened. He had to calm her down. Fenrich was seriously worried because everything was going to the point that the final impression would be spoiled. He would like nothing more than this, and surprisingly, she says that everything is fine. It just takes a couple of minutes. I won't be able to walk around and enjoy the festival any longer. It's not clear yet whether she's just trying to calm him down or whether she was actually able to come to her senses in such a short time. Most likely, she just doesn't want it to end like this. He clearly tried, and Lily wouldn't want him to regret anything and be disappointed. In the end, they decided to go to a quieter place and rest a bit. It was a very good idea because there was a place with a beautiful view. There is also a bench here. There is absolutely no one around, complete silence, exactly what you need after a loud fireworks display. Lily couldn't even imagine that in the capital, where there are so many people, there could be a place where there is no one. And the Duke doesn't know yet where he likes it more. He's a little confused because everything didn't go according to plan. And then she told me that she used to come here very often as a child, but without friends and completely alone, and no other way. He recalled how he told that he was an ordinary person and that this was the beginning of his story, which she was very interested to hear. He had to run away here secretly so that no one would notice. The boy begged, stole, and also, on festival days like that child, sold flowers. He was a little ashamed to admit it, but one day he was lucky enough to steal a wallet from a rich merchant, and from that day on, his life changed. He had a girlfriend who was a couple of years younger than him, but her situation was even worse. If she came to the prince empty-handed, she was punished and left without anything, without food, and they could even take away her clothes. That was life. Either you steal money for street thugs or you get beaten up. And there was only food that was about to spoil. They could only dream of something fresh. At some point, he got tired of it all. He got her some food and then promised that everything would change very soon, so it couldn't go on like this any longer. He felt responsible not only for himself, but also for the girl who had been there all this time and had become like a sister to him. There were also unsuccessful attempts. They were found with food, punished for it, beaten. But Fenrich knew that a hard path awaited him, and he had to do something about it. The most terrible and unfair moments were when he stole money. Then this money was stolen from him, and those people to whom he was supposed to bring everything were waiting for this money. And when they found out that he couldn't even save it, they treated him too cruelly. Sometimes they simply didn't believe him. They thought that the boy had taken everything for himself, but he never deceived them and often already did so. Since they were bullying him anyway, they could have taken at least a little bit a couple of times for food and clothes. It wasn't life at all. It was some kind of survival, and every day there was the same thought. Why is it that some people are lucky to be born into a wealthy family, while others have to suffer just to get at least a piece of bread? It turns out that the boy they bought flowers from has exactly the same fate, and it is quite possible that every evening he gives the money he earned to villains. Just like Fenrich did, it is hard to imagine what it was like for him to look at wealthy people who are having fun and cannot even give him a single penny. They just pass by, although it costs them nothing to help, but almost no one did it. It was the worst period in his life. Sometimes some memories appear, and after them immediately depression and such a state as fear that someday he will return to the very place from which he started. If this happens a second time, he simply won't be able to stand it, although there's probably no point in even thinking about it. Now the Duke is so rich that he will never sell flowers on the street again, much less give the money he earns to anyone but himself. Surprisingly, the story doesn't end there. He left the most interesting part for later. One day the boy was sitting on the street. As usual, he was very hungry, and a girl came up to him, who looked at him with a very warm look. He felt a very pleasant energy from her, and felt that she could be trusted. He asked what she needed, because at that moment he was no longer selling flowers, and she just wanted to give him money. She stood before him in an expensive dress that ordinary people would never see in their entire lives. She had snow-white skin that had never known hard work and shiny long hair that was impossible not to remember. Then he had the idea that this could be a test. He immediately pushed her away and said that he was not going to accept anything from her. That girl didn't listen to him. She stopped him, although it wasn't easy. He constantly resisted and even pushed her. At some point, Fenrich yelled and warned that if she didn't leave, she would regret it very much. And then she takes out a bag of coins, thanks to which he will be able to live normally for at least several months. She gives him this bag, asks him to hide it before anyone sees it, especially those people who can take it from him. The girl even apologized that she wanted to give him more, but that was all she had with her at that moment. Before leaving on her own business, she noticed that he had nothing to defend himself with and immediately gave him something that might come in handy. She gave him a sword that was in a special metal case and looked so scary that it was even scary to touch it. She then told him that this sword would be more useful to him than to her, especially since she didn't even know how to use it, but she was sure that he would have to. From that moment on, he was no longer so aggressive. That girl gave him the opportunity to get to a new level of life. And in the end, she demanded that he promise that one day he would become a happy man and would remember her with a smile, and then ran off to do her business and wished him all the best. That day, a goal appeared in his life. He wanted to see her again. He wanted to talk to her. He destroyed for her sake. He did the maximum he could. He climbed higher and higher. He even got involved in political intrigues against his will, just so he wouldn't sit still and justify her expectations. All this was in order to see her. And the most interesting thing in this whole story is that it was Lily, and their very first meeting at the banquet was not accidental. It was the day he found her, but hid the fact that he was the boy she had helped before. The girl doesn't even suspect this and now asks what happened next and whether he saw that girl at least once. She wonders if he paid her back, which means the guy can either tell the whole truth now or decide to do it some other day. He looked at her and replied that he was trying to do it right now and had completed his mission exactly halfway. He had found her, but he would repay the debt tenfold. Fenrich never said that the girl he found was her, and that he would probably choose a more suitable moment or even day for this. I'm very curious what will come out of this. He does everything very secretly, quietly, and maybe it's even for the best. It was at that moment that Lily felt like he was not telling her something. His look spoke for itself. After that, they talked a little. Both of them were in a slightly better mood. The girl had already forgotten about those fireworks, and in general, everything was wonderful again. They have already returned to that very street. It seems like nothing unexpected will happen, and also, the darker it gets outside, the more beautiful all these lanterns and signs look. Lily didn't expect that the atmosphere could heal so much. Now she wants to visit such places often, although she didn't think before that the time of the walk would have such an effect. During the day, everything would be completely different, and at night she liked it much better. I guess it all depends on what you're doing, but considering they spent most of their time during the day, going for a walk at night was a great idea. Meanwhile, the guy suggested going in the other direction. She definitely hadn't been there yet, and it seemed to him that since there was enough time, it would be possible to go around the entire territory and not stand still. Naturally, she immediately agreed to everything. The girl has no extraneous thoughts in her head, but he does not stop remembering the whole path that he went through for this meeting. He was ready to destroy everyone in his path, but he held back with all his might, especially in front of those who hurt her. Lily can't even imagine what this man was capable of for her, because at the very least he became a Grand Duke, and that's already a lot. Here they are already near a very interesting place, probably one of the most significant places they could have approached. This is the famous altar where wishes are made to the god of the festival. Absolutely everyone who is here, either at the beginning or at the end, must come here and make a wish. Even though it is superstitious, he offers to make an offering. At least he really wanted her to accept this initiative. Even though the girl is not sure whether her wish will come true or not, she has no choice. She has one wish, and she could not miss the opportunity not to make it in this way. Lily begins to pray that the higher powers will return her to the reality from which she came here. Fenrich is standing next to her. He is very interested to know what she is thinking about now and what she needs, so much so that he even listens. Suddenly, he will be able to hear something. They have already done everything that is needed. Put one flower there, and now all that remains is to believe that every wish will be fulfilled. Some time passed. There were fewer and fewer people. Everyone went home. It was important for the Duke to know if she liked everything. To which she replies that, of course, everything was wonderful. She hasn't walked like this for a long time and is incredibly grateful to him for this evening. When they had already moved away and were starting to go home, that same guy about whom little is known came up to that place and started heading straight for the flower that she had put there. He took it from there and thought that it was too obvious what her wish was, and since he took this flower from there, he needed the wish not to come true and for her to stay here forever. He clearly has something against her, It's interesting that the Duke seems to feel something for her, and this guy who lives in the same house with them treats her the exact opposite. It's as if he doesn't just want to take revenge on something, he literally hates her and wishes the girl harm. It is so important to him that everything she dreams about does not come true, that it is impossible to even imagine how she could have offended him so much. The next day came. The Duke also had several plans for today. He had not yet shown her his library, which occupied almost half of the entire mansion. This is a sacred place for him. When he comes here, all this energy heals him from the inside. And even with a bow, it is strictly forbidden to enter this library without his permission. So the fact that he came here with Lily says a lot, but she doesn't know about it yet, like about many other things. With such a large library, there could be anything here, even information about the forbidden forest and the statue in the church. And now they have just come to the table where there is what she asked him for, the map of the Ataloya, and since this is a special place, it is also depicted here in a special way. Here is a large scale. You can perfectly and very conveniently examine any point that interests you. Every area here is painted so beautifully that you want to look at it like some kind of painting. And then the guy says that as soon as the situation stabilizes a little, it will be possible to go on some trip together, especially since he himself hasn't been anywhere for a long time. Because of work, there is always not enough time, but just from his word together, she gets goosebumps again because lately he does too much for her. She blushed even more. The girl has not yet learned to accept so much. Even the fact that she lives in such a luxurious house and nothing is required of her. Here already seems like luxury. Besides all this, he provides her with a huge wardrobe, food from the best chef, travel and walks, and he spends time on this instead of his work. Meanwhile, she asked him for a little time to study this map, not hinting at all that he should leave, but he left her alone, completely trusting. It was very nice, but at the same time, incredibly awkward. Lily can't get used to how often he causes a storm of emotions in her. Everything was calm, but with these trips he turned her head. Now it is impossible to think about anything else. Lily wasn't bothering anyone. She was standing in one place, when suddenly an archmage came up to her and asked what she was doing here. He looked at her as if he wanted to say something that she might not like, and very strongly. She didn't react very well to him, and surprisingly, she even remembers his name, namely Ivan. A few seconds had not passed before the maids burst in and said that it was not possible to enter here so easily, for now only Lily had permission to do so. They themselves are taking a big risk by coming here to take him to another room, but the guy is not going to leave. He ignores their presence and pretends that he is happy to meet the girl. Lily is now only happy with one. She again saw these clues in the form of answers. The first option, give him a slap. The second option, pour water on him. And the third, kiss him as a sign of greeting. I wonder what she will choose from these three options. Clearly not the third. She likes the first or the second more. Perhaps the second option is too cruel. She still chose the first one, to pour water on him, so at least he won't hit back and is unlikely to pour water on her. The assistants didn't expect anything like this, but for now, they just didn't think about making sure that not a single book got wet. She doesn't think about it yet. She just wants to show how happy she is about his appearance, and she succeeded. She explained it by saying that her hand simply slipped and she didn't want it to happen. Although everyone understands perfectly well that it was absolutely intentional. No one knows what he will say to this. It is unlikely that by such an act she increased the magician's sympathy towards her, although for her it was not necessary. She just did what she wanted, and he just said that it was clear that she did it on purpose, and this time he saw her more aggressively than usual. He is one of those people who like surprises, but not so much and not in such a way. And in the meantime, the guy asked the assistants to go somewhere because he has a very important conversation with Lily. She didn't wait for him to tell her anything. She immediately warned him that they had nothing to talk about, and if he didn't leave now, she would. One phrase was enough to make her stay, and it sounded like this. This concerns your mother. Now the guy asked if she changed her mind or not, and made it sound like it was his little victory in this conversation. Lily first met Ivan after the prison incident. It was on the main holiday of Ataloya, the day of the foundation. The girl appeared there in a black dress. She hardly bothered anyone, didn't even look around, but everyone was discussing her. This was the case almost every time she appeared in high society. Some even thought that she had long since died, no matter how it sounds. She was treated so badly that some people allowed themselves to pour wine on her when Lilia passed by. They simply poured full glasses in her direction. She had to endure all this because there was no one to stand up for her. People knew this and took advantage of her defenselessness. And they said that it was all an accident. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then there was a smile that spoke for itself. This is how almost every day went when she appeared on the street or anywhere where there were other people, and she could do nothing about it. The girl felt superfluous. Even those aristocrats who were famous for their politeness and upbringing were no different from those who poured wine on her. But suddenly she meets Ivan. He stopped her, but initially did not even introduce himself and asked to look at something. He directed his energy at those who had offended her, taught them a lesson, and at that time it seemed like something crazy. Something that is impossible in real life. But still, that's how they met. Ivan took revenge on one aristocrat. He created a wound for her and said he could do this with every person who made her shed even one tear or get a little upset. Ivan was especially dangerous among the main characters. The girl never understood why he helped her, fearing that he might ask her for something for this. She specifically said that she didn't need anything, and he did everything only on his own initiative. And in the meantime, after some time, they are standing opposite each other again, and Lily can't wait to find out what he can tell her and what he wants to talk about. She is very confused by this smile. It seems like it doesn't mean anything good and only makes her wary. It was a real surprise for him that the girl was obsessed with the emperor and even the duke. Even thought that she was just a weak girl, but she had a character that hooked him. The guy himself doesn't know why he's so drawn to her. Apparently everyone has their own reason, and now finally he said his first words. Ivan, as he knew, started talking about the forbidden forest and asked what she knew about it, if she knew anything at all. The girl doesn't understand why he's asking about this, what this man is getting at and what her mother has to do with it. It's also unclear. He says that when a person studies magic like he does, he constantly receives different messages. For example, in the villages near the forest, they often report seeing some creatures that are half monsters and half humans. There used to be a lot of legends about this, but now it happens more and more often that people say that they really see them. The problem is that monsters exist only to destroy people. But among them, they say, there are rare individuals who can fall in love with people. And while Ivan had not finished talking about it, Lily stopped him and asked why he was telling all this. And couldn't he just send a letter so as not to waste anyone's time? It turns out that he just needs to find out if her mother was in those places before coming to the palace. Although why he is interested in this is also unclear. Ivan says that monsters strive to protect their own. Even if they are mutant creatures, mysterious incidents committed by monsters continue in the capital, and she is lucky to use this as an excuse to leave the palace. He called her a lucky person, but judging from his words, it was still not clear what he was saying. The girl replied that she was an ordinary person and his hints were baseless. Apparently, she finally understood what he was getting at. And then the most interesting part began. The guy smiles, gently touches her hair, and says that he knows that the Grand Duke deliberately took her away, although he believes that under his personal protection, she would be much better off. He begins to press her closer and closer. The girl begins to get nervous and is already afraid that no one will have time to come to her aid. She pushed him away with all her might, asking him to move away. Otherwise, the Duke would find out about this meeting. Lily is surprised that he allows himself to do this, and on the territory of the Duke's mansion, which is already too much. After this, he also does not intend to go anywhere, because while looking through the records in the Tower of Magicians, he discovered something else interesting. Her mother, Empress Vanessa, entered the Forbidden Forest before becoming a concubine, but few people know about it. Right after that, Ivan said goodbye to her and went about his business, and she begins to remember some phrases when someone told her to go to that forest, but in fact, everything points to her having been there. And in the meantime, a very important meeting is taking place. Judging by the information that was found, the accidents are connected with the decrease in the number of monsters in the forest. Accordingly, and since there are fewer of them in the forest, there are more of them somewhere. That is, these monsters can hide in the city and are closer than people can imagine. This is exactly what the priest is trying to talk about, who is very worried about this topic. The knights immediately answer him that the number of monsters in the forest is decreasing only because they deal with them personally, and it cannot be that some monsters are making their way into the city. As a result, everyone has their own opinion. Everyone argues, shouts down each other, and only one duke sits quietly, not bothering anyone. Meanwhile, Ivan can't calm down. He is interested in getting to know Lily better because he feels that she may be involved in this matter. If the prophecy is to be believed, she should know more than the others. And that's exactly what he's been getting into lately. He even had doubts whether she was really a human being, as she was trying to appear, because it was possible that she was a mutated monster, although even he himself did not like to think about it. In short, he needs to make sure that the girl falls into his hands, and to do this, he will have to get rid of the obstacle in the form of Duke Fenrich. He is too sensitive to everything that concerns that girl, and everyone understands that he will not back down so easily. Ivan spends all his free time in his office. There is nothing interesting for him anymore, and it seems that he is very serious. Meanwhile, he has already called his assistant to him, saying that he thinks it would be best to explore the inside of the Forbidden Forest, and for this you need to prepare a meeting with the church and try to do it in the near future, so as not to delay the matter. And also, he urgently needed to find out where the Grand Duke was now, whether he was in the mansion, because since the health of His Majesty the Emperor was not very good, it seemed to him that it would be better to discuss this issue with the Duke. In fact, he is interested in getting rid of his direct competitor, Fenrich. While everyone is busy with the investigation, he plans to get Lily and Will go to the mansion just for this. As soon as Ivan went outside, he was about to negotiate for a carriage when suddenly a man greeted him. But the magician didn't even have time to look at him. How he grabbed him by the neck and began to squeeze with such force that after that it was easy to lose consciousness. Then that person threw him some distance away, looking closely, even only now realized who it was. It was Fenrich. It seems he knew about Ivan's plans in advance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that he was planning to enter the mansion where no one invited him. The magician says he has no idea what the Duke is talking about. He is pretending as if he is trying to figure out the case and is not going anywhere. The Duke didn't even listen to anything, he said briefly and to the point so that Ivan wouldn't even think about approaching his house, and especially not to Lily. It turns out that Fenrich understands perfectly well that he is an obstacle for someone and somehow finds out about all of Ivan's plans. As soon as the guy let him go, the magician started smiling his sinister smile and said a phrase that was clearly unnecessary. That the Duke dared to threaten the main power of the empire and made a big mistake for which he would later answer. Fenrich took these words as an empty sound. He is not going to prove anything to anyone. He will simply destroy all those who will stand in his way. Ivan was very angry. He thought that everything would be easier, but he didn't even manage to get to the mansion itself. He was not used to losing so easily. He decided to resolve this conflict with the help of magic and show who was stronger. He began to utter some words, created an energy field around himself, and thought that in this way he would be able to scare the Duke. But it wasn't that easy. The energy doesn't affect him. It doesn't even reach Fenrich. Something is preventing it. The guy doesn't understand what the problem is. Everything should have worked perfectly, but now for some reason nothing happens. The magician begins to feel that some kind of magic, similar to dark, is emanating from the Duke, but he really doesn't want to believe it. This power is much greater than his power, and now he definitely has no chance to scare anyone. Fenrich thought that he would have to destroy his enemy anyway, and thought why not do it right now? At the most inopportune moment, an assistant comes up, calls Ivan and says that they urgently need to go to the magic tower, as if they see that something else is more important now, so that his master stays alive at all. I wonder if the Duke will let him go. He is already starting to take his sword, as if he changed his mind and still gave Ivan a chance to think about his behavior. Then he simply left them alone, went about his business, and made it clear that next time everything could end differently. The assistant starts to worry. He asks if everything is okay, although it is already clear that everything is very bad. He literally goes crazy because someone is constantly interfering with him, although every time it seems that the plan is flawless and nothing can interfere with it. 235th year of the Adaloy calendar, a mysterious death occurred in the slums. The leader of a gang was killed by someone. No one could even imagine that it was done by a little boy whom no one even suspected of this. 5 years later, rumors began to spread about the war demon. He brought a miraculous victory to the empire. People began to call him a hero. They started inviting him to various events. Many wanted to be friends with him, and each time his personality became more and more popular. At some point, he became interested in one girl. He found out that some people were cruelly bullying her, and these people had a high status, without exception. Then he found out that this was the very girl he had been looking for many years. He followed her almost every day, and when there was a real Lily in this case, the guy followed her on the street and noticed that she started jumping into the lake. The guy thought she was a little out of her mind, and of course he started diving right after her. He was sure that she would still thank him for it. Since he had so much to tell her, he couldn't let her leave this life and started saving her, even though she didn't ask him to. He couldn't even imagine that it was her wish, and the girl had no other choice. She just wanted peace and quiet, and to say goodbye to this cruel life in which nothing held her. So he saved her, and from that moment on, there was a girl in that body who is still in it to this day. She would be interested to know how it happened that, having found herself in the body of a girl who drowned, she miraculously managed to survive. She thought for a long time about who could save her, but she never found this person, which means that the moment will come when she will finally find out everything that interested her all this time. Meanwhile, that magician can't calm down that the Duke treated him so easily and boldly, and he couldn't even strike back. His neck has been hurting for a long time. He can't touch it with anything. Everything is burning, and the pain, as luck would have it, reminds him of that situation. He is not one of those who knows how to lose. Most likely, everything is just beginning. He just needs time and another plan. If only he knew what kind of power he had, which he encountered for the first time in his life. Ivan doesn't know a single magician who would have a power stronger than his. But such a person was found, and at the most inopportune moment, when nothing foreshadowed trouble. As far as he knows, there is no such magical power not only in the Empire, but also on the entire continent. He has truly never seen anything like it. For him, it is a real mystery. He even became interested in solving it. And there is also a feeling that the solution is somewhere close, literally on the surface. There is only one explanation for Fenrich having dark magic, but Ivan is more than sure that he is fully human and cannot be that monster that is half human and half monster. It's impossible. It seems to him that the whole thing is probably about Lily. She must be half demon, because everyone who met her died one after another, and then a demon suddenly appeared in the center of the capital, just like her. Here he immediately remembers the magic tower, where there is an underground library of enormous proportions. It seems to him that all cases with demons should be recorded in this magic tower. If there were cases with rare demons before, then there may be clues about those who interest him. Naturally, he immediately went to this place. From the first seconds, he notices something that is lying on the floor and immediately attracted his attention. These are some historical records, although he put all the historical books in the corner, but probably he still didn't notice something. He unfolds this information so carefully, as if he feels that this is exactly what he was looking for. And in the meantime, his assistant is looking for him all over the tower. As usual, he can't find his master and has even gotten used to the fact that it's impossible to find him the first time. Finally, it happened. This time, he didn't even run halfway up the tower and immediately noticed that the gentleman was engrossed in something. This happens very rarely. Ivan is too carried away by something. He was even afraid to approach and ask what he was doing. Ivan very quietly says the phrase, "A way to separate the Duke from that girl." But did he really read something that could harm the Duke? Evening came. They had no plans for today. Everyone went to bed peacefully and Lily fell asleep earlier than everyone else. She did it on purpose. She wanted to get a good night's sleep. It was a little harder to fall asleep than she thought, but everything worked out. And now the next day has come. She wakes up and feels great. She even decided that today she should also try to go to bed earlier. She didn't even have time to wake up normally, change clothes, get out of bed, when suddenly in the room, she sees Fenrich, who seemed to be watching her all this time while she was sleeping. Lily pretended that she reacted normally to this, asked how long he had been there, although she wanted to scream at the whole house and ask how he could come into the room like that, and without warning. Even though it was his house, there were still some rules of decency that she thought he knew. The guy replied that she was sleeping so soundly that he decided to just sit next to her, and since she was already awake, he could leave. At the very last moment, she grabs his hand, says nothing. Although there is no need to say anything here anyway, everything is clear anyway. Just in case, she still hinted that it was not necessary to leave, especially since she had already gotten used to him and would not mind talking about something. The Duke expected anything but this. He froze a little in one place. He didn't think that she would say this at all and behave like this. On the one hand, it was incredibly awkward, but on the other hand, it was very pleasant. It means that she begins to trust him and feels comfortable with him, even in the morning, without makeup and smart clothes. This is very pleasing. But still, their conversation began on the topic of how she was recently frightened by the Archmage. It seems to him that it was entirely his fault. He should have taken better care of the security and not allowed something like this to happen. To which she replied that this was not the case at all. Nothing terrible had happened, and she was not blaming anyone. At first, the girl didn't want to tell him anything, but since he was so concerned about safety, she thought she needed to be honest with him until the end, so she told him about yesterday's situation. Namely that Ivan offered her to move to his house, leave the Duke and say goodbye to him forever, and also pressed her tightly to himself and crossed all the boundaries of what was permissible. At that moment, the guy thought that he should have been tougher with him. If only he had known all this information. When he was talking to the magician, he definitely would not have let him go. The Duke regretted that he had shown kindness and was sure that this man no longer deserved anything like that. It would seem that everything is fine. The conversation is over. We can talk about something else, but he wanted to ask a question. Would she want to live with someone else, for example? With that Ivan, if she knew that Fenrich would never be offended by her. Meanwhile, Avon continues to figure out what he discovered several hundred years ago. A wise man left behind a book of prophecies. This is the same book that he recently found. The source of all demons, it still exists in the forest. Although many think that it is a legend, and nothing like that exists in reality. He is eternally asleep but never sleeps, cannot die but is also unable to live, no matter how it sounds. Only one can save him, a creature that is neither a demon nor a man, until it finds him, will suffer, living an illusory life again and again. It also says that the life of this creature can be interrupted hundreds of times and reborn hundreds of times. Very similar to the story of Lily, although this may not mean anything yet. If we assume that the girl has something to do with this, it becomes clear why everyone insists that she go to that forest anyway. Even her own mother told her this. Now it is clear why this document is securely hidden in the depths of the tower. If this became known, the whole country would be turned upside down. But he doesn't really care about that. What's more important is that he might find this information useful. Now all that's left is to hope that he makes another mistake and doesn't harm anyone. Meanwhile, their conversation was not over yet. Lily was very surprised that the guy was asking her such questions, because since she was still here and refused Ivan, then everything should be clear anyway. The Duke is afraid that she might choose the magician because she wants to be free from the Emperor. Perhaps in that case, Ivan will be more useful than him. With the help of magic, he can easily send a person to another country, and this is exactly what she should be interested in. Didn't the guy think that if she thought about it the same way as he does now, she would have agreed and wouldn't have woken up in this house in a good mood? She confidently answered him that she wanted to stay there and was not considering any other offers, although she believed that she should not have explained anything like that at all. She reminded him that she was crazy about this house, about her new life with him, and that she was not going to change all this for something else with dubious prospects. She wants to live here as long as she can, and she won't like any corner of this world more than this mansion. This place is special to her, and she won't change it for anything. It was as if this was exactly what the guy wanted to hear, and she even felt embarrassed that she had confessed it to him like that. Although she would have been embarrassed before, Fenrich was sincerely glad that she turned out to be such a loyal person. He even felt ashamed that he even started talking about this, and thus showed that he did not completely trust her. It was very unusual when the Duke smiled like that. She really liked it. Lily even got a little embarrassed. So he becomes even more beautiful. It is very pleasant to look at him. But she did not notice how she accidentally looked away. Apparently she could not stand such beauty. Meanwhile, he reminded that tomorrow would be the foundation day, and of course, she immediately understood what day it was. The Duke believes that although His Majesty's health is still questionable, The event cannot be canceled and now asks if she plans to attend. The guy thought that, frankly speaking, he didn't really want it to happen. He would definitely try because if he had immediately said that it would be better for her not to go there, it would have been as disrespectful to her as others had acted, including the emperor. The worst thing is that there she can meet those people because of whom she suffered for many years. The girl also thought, and then that she would not like to be there. But for some reason she thought that if she refused, the guy might be upset. Then I remembered that this is one of the few major royal events and it is very rare to have the opportunity to see so many people in one place. And most importantly, there is a possibility, as it seems to her, that the real protagonist may be there. And for now, there are more reasons to go there than reasons to stay at home. In the end, it took about a couple of minutes to think. Lily said that she would go there after all, and he tried to pretend that it didn't upset him. He just said that he understood. He didn't even try to say anything, to try to convince me of anything. He just resigned himself and was very upset. Still, he has some hope that the girl will change her mind now and say that it would be better to stay at home, although this is very unlikely. Instead, she asked if he would go, because it would be a bit scary with me, and she wouldn't mind going there together. This is a real invitation that he could not refuse, naturally. The very second she said the last word, he answered, "Yes, of course." The very day had arrived. Everyone had been preparing for this moment since the evening, especially the servants, who had hardly slept and had not gotten enough sleep at all. Hannah thought about the image for the lady in advance, brought her this incredible dress, which will definitely outshine everyone around her. The assistant has been complimenting me since the morning. She even said that she would like to be in this body for one day, to look at herself in the mirror 100 times a day. At some point the Duke comes up. He asks Hannah not to bother him so much, although he doesn't understand anything. Thus she supports the girl very much and raises her self-esteem, which is important before such events. They didn't even try to explain anything to him. He's a guy, so he doesn't sing anything anyway and doesn't want to understand. The assistant suggested that he take a look at this beauty himself, who would be able to light up the entire empire as soon as it got darker outside. She literally exudes luxury, beauty, harmony. She is all shining. It is hard to even imagine an image that could be better than this. The guy confirmed that indeed, the assistants tried, but he believes that the girl's natural beauty plays a huge role here, which only needed to be emphasized, and these are very correct words. After so many pleasant words, you can safely go to any event, and if at least someone says something offensive to her, it will only mean that this person is jealous of her. Meanwhile, they had already arrived at their destination. It was very good that the journey was short and took only half an hour, although this happens very rarely. Since there is still time before the celebration begins, he suggests that they rest in the carriage before going out, where it is very noisy and full of people. But the thing is that now is just the time to go to the tower. The girl apologized and said that she needed to leave for a while. If, of course, he didn't mind. I didn't quite understand what that meant. She didn't say where she was going, and when she did, I thought that it wasn't worth doing. She started to explain that she had forgotten some clothes there, but even she realized that this was an unconvincing excuse. In the end, he said that he would allow her to do this, but only on one condition: he would go with her, because it was very dangerous to go there alone. The girl was confused. She said that it was not necessary, but he does not quite understand what the problem is and why she reacts so strangely, as if she is hiding something. Somehow they agreed that he would wait for her at the entrance, and then she would go alone, although even this seems strange to him. The girl is back in this room. She has completely forgotten how dark and cramped it was here, and she doesn't understand how she lived in such conditions for so long before. She was so used to good conditions that she would never go back, although it still does not depend on her, and in the meantime, having made sure that there was no one around, started accessing the system and asked to see the Book of Memories, since this is one of the few places where she can use the system. Finally, the Book of Memories is open, but still nothing is visible, as if there are not enough points or time to open this opportunity. In that case, she asked to open the event log, because there should definitely be something in it. All the records of Lily should be there, including training. It is unlikely. It may be there. There is some kind of hint there. There is nothing in it either. It is absolutely empty. There is not a single word or even information why she cannot use at least something. The system seems to ignore her, doesn't let her find out anything, although before there were a lot of notification prompts, and even when she didn't ask for it. And now this. As a result, she starts pressing everything in a row, but constantly gets an error, and she has no explanation for this. Suddenly, a miracle happened, and they started showing her at least some memories, for example, a forest, and it is possible that this is the very forest where she will have to go sooner or later. All this was at the very beginning, when she just got into this game and didn't know at all how everything worked here. She went to that lake almost every day. She loved it there because it was calm and quiet. One day, due to her own carelessness, she dropped an important notebook into the lake, and it immediately fell to the bottom. And she didn't take it out because she felt that she couldn't swim well, and there was no one nearby who could save her if something happened. The girl was surprised how she could forget such an important thing and began to further understand all of this. But the system starts to glitch. It seems like it is not allowed to see the most important things, although there were no problems with this before. If the girl had known that such problems would soon begin, she would have turned to this system much earlier and would not have wasted her time. Finally, some moments appear. She sees two hands but vaguely remembers in what period it could have been. And in general, to what extent can these memories help her? She needs certain memories, but there are also those that make no sense. The map doesn't work. The event log, viewing memories. Nothing else works. Everything is glitchy. Some mistakes started, unnecessary pictures that she already remembered, and all the most important things, as luck would have it, did not appear. The problem is that the more of these bugs there are, the sooner the system can stop working. The question arises whether there is any point in looking for the main character further, because if the system collapses, the characters gain memory and self-awareness, and you don't even want to think about how this could all end for her personally. For now, the only thing she can do is come to that forest, because perhaps once she's there, she'll be able to remember something. This is the only clue right now, but more on that later. Right now, that very event is starting in the Imperial Palace. They were already there, and immediately noticed how bad the guy was feeling. He wasn't even looking at the guests and was completely pale, as if he lacked strength and energy. He feels really bad. He doesn't even want to look at her, but not only because he doesn't want to get upset, but also because as soon as he notices her, he immediately wants to talk. We'll definitely offer to go back. We'll start telling that the problem has already been solved and the Imperial Palace is already absolutely safe, which is why she has to hide behind the Duke's back. Although it seems that he has already noticed her. The girl looks at him very embarrassedly. She knew that she shouldn't show up here, but Lily is already here, and she will have to make time for everyone who wants to see her. She is already beginning to look around, gradually noticing each of her acquaintances, and with each passing second it begins to seem that while it is not too late, it is better to go home altogether. This feeling sits deep inside her, but since the girl is silent, she is ready for anything, because maybe a miracle will happen and this evening will pass peacefully. The Duke couldn't help but notice how she began to feel uneasy, and suggested that they go outside and get some fresh air, but she immediately refused and explained that it seemed to him. And to make him feel good, she said a phrase that always makes him smile, that if the Duke of the Row, she has nothing to worry about. And meanwhile, more and more people appear in the hall, and the more of them there are, the more awkward she feels, but now she has to hide it. The Emperor rose from his seat. He waited until the main part of the guests were in the hall and probably wanted to say something to them all. Something like gratitude that they came and did not ignore the invitation. At least he does it usually and naturally. Just the sight of him gave Lily goosebumps. His Majesty addresses every inhabitant of the Ataloya Empire and reminds that this year marks 999 years since the founding of their sacred empire. Throughout their long history, their ancestors defended these lands from people and monsters, and more recently, they fought bravely, risking their lives, and preserved the pride of the empire, so he is proud of each of them. But, he added, however, there are still those who threaten the civilian population. And it's not just about people. He feels like now is the time to prove his courage, but it's not entirely clear what that means. In the end, he simply asked them to swear that when the empire was in danger, each of them would stand up for it and not stand aside. Meanwhile, the guests started on appetizers. There are a lot of them. For every taste and color, also, there are many main dishes, for example, meat and different soups. There is enough of everything to go around. This is in the emperor's style. If he does something, he does it in the best possible way and carefully thinks out all the details in advance. Lily is already starting to look at everyone around her. She thinks that maybe the real main character has already appeared somewhere. The Duke notices this and asks, what interested her so much? Why was she acting as if she was looking for someone and not saying who exactly? But he could help with this. It became very awkward to look for the main character right in front of the Grand Duke. But what can you do? That's the goal. I have to deceive him too often. And in the meantime, Lily saw some guy, and surprisingly, he even knows her name, and turned to her as if he wants to talk. It all happened in a matter of seconds. She has no idea who it is and how they can know each other. She doesn't even have any thoughts about it. This guy said, what kind of emperor? And because of the confusion, the girl didn't even hear the whole phrase. It turns out that she was just worried for nothing. It was one of the emperor's assistants who came to tell her that he wanted to talk to her urgently. If he didn't even give her anything to answer, he asked her to convey his apologies to His Majesty and that she was unwell, so she would not communicate with anyone. There was never a time when the Duke wanted to protect her so much that he even began to contradict His Majesty himself. The assistant said that all these days, while His Majesty was bedridden, he constantly talked about Lily. Therefore, it seems to him that now this conversation is necessary for him, and it would be wrong to upset the emperor with such an answer. Lily thought that Dietrich was the only one who had been with her from the very beginning, and perhaps by talking to him, she could learn something about her forgotten past. But these were just thoughts, and there was no guarantee that everything would be like that. These are no longer the times when she can so easily communicate with people she is not sure of, but apparently this does not stop her. She decided that she needed to go to him after all, apologized to the Duke, and promised that she would return very quickly and that everything would be fine. It's just not clear what will come out of this. Was it a mistake or not? But the choice has been made, and there is no turning back. Lily thought he was in his place, thought she would reach him in a matter of seconds, but he was not there. The girl asked where he might be, and she was taken to a very beautiful place where you can even feel a special atmosphere. This view makes your head spin. It's just incredible, especially in the evening when there's a lot of light around. Lily didn't have time to enjoy all this beauty before she was taken to the emperor, who had been waiting for her for a while. He even admitted that, frankly speaking, he didn't think that she would agree to his request, that he already wanted to go back to the hall. Therefore, he was pleasantly surprised. In any case, this does not mean that he is well disposed towards her. Everything can change at any moment. She knows this man too well and understands that it is too early to relax. He started asking if she remembered this place, and naturally, a girl will never forget something like this in her life, no matter what. As children, they often played here, picked flowers, but then everything looked different, and now it's much better. Now, this place is looked after, professional gardeners work here, and it is very visible. Right after that, Dietrich started telling that lately he has been tormented by nightmares, but not just nightmares, but with her presence, where he hurts her. These are the most terrible dreams he has ever seen in his life, and he would do anything to never see anything like that again and wake up normally at least once. It's so painful that he can't even describe in words how tired he is of it and how much he hates the night, especially when it's time to fall asleep. Besides all this, he said that he constantly remembers Lily before going to bed. But these are good memories, but for some reason, they end in nightmares. Then he recalled that when her mother was alive, when they were together before he ascended the throne, they used to secretly hide in the garden. They made a mess in the library. The guy listed a lot more things thanks to which the girl begins to remember the past better and is very happy about it. But she still doesn't understand what he's getting at, why he started talking about it, and what she'll hear from him next. It seems that the system brought these two people together specifically so that he could help her remember everything. For example, how they dressed like ordinary people and looked at the people's altars as if it were something secret. And then she disappeared. Then they quickly found her, how scared he was and couldn't imagine his life without her. It turns out that this is the very hand that the girl recently saw in the memories in the system. These were their hands just during the period that he is talking about. His story ended with her leaving him at the exact moment she lost her mother. I was left all alone in this world. At first he tried to understand her, even supported her, but she moved away and he felt it more and more every day. Then he also began a very difficult period in his life. There were many difficulties, and because of his young age, everything seemed more serious than it actually was. He tried to protect himself in a harsh world that constantly put him through one test after another. Since then, he had a goal to always have her by his side, even when they grow up and become free people. Basically, that's how it all turned out, and it's not surprising. The boy planned everything for a very long time and carefully, as he knows how. Since that time, he was sure that there was no place safer than his palace, so he set a goal to leave her there forever. Everything was going according to plan until one moment when she secretly ran away and didn't say anything about it. He ran into her room with a smile, but when he saw that she was not there, he immediately understood everything and could not hold back his tears. It turns out that this is somehow connected with why he invited her here. The guy slowly leads to the most important thing because he always knew how to keep the intrigue. Now it cost him nothing to admit that back then he was blinded by anger and still wants her to be near. But the most interesting thing started when he hinted that he knew one of her secrets, and in return he demanded that she fulfill one request. He wants to bring her back to the palace and promises that he will never harm her again and will do everything to make her happy for the rest of her life. He doesn't know how to ask her about it anymore. The guy is ready to beg as much as he wants, just so that she agrees and comes back to him. He understands perfectly well how terrible he was for her all this time, at least at a conscious age. He is ready to correct himself. Again, if only she would start trusting him again.